What is up, everybody? I think we got this set up. We got a dual stream. I know you guys have been missing Bob. Bob, how was the vacay?
It was awesome. It was awesome. Exhausting though. It was like it was a really kind of a music kind of a festival situation where there were about 8 bands that played over 4 days at the Hard Rock down in Cancun, or actually Riviera Maya, and it's a lot, man. It's a huge resort, and there's like multiple stages, and there's a ton of walking, and you're up late, and you're up early because you want to try to get out to the pool and relax some. So it's tiring, but it's a lot of fun. The music was great. Had a ton of friends there, so yeah, it was a good time, man.
And folks, we're doing this now. We're watching the sentencing. For folks who don't know, me and Bob streamed this whole thing together. So I figured let's do this thing to do the sentencing together. And I have a new program. But check this out, folks. Boom, me, Bob, and the chat right next to the screen, so we can see you guys. So I'm excited about that.
Super cool.
Thank you all for being here. I see Sleuthy is here. Dawn, thank you, everybody. We are just waiting. I'll show you right now. It hasn't. I have this screen up and it hasn't started yet. So let me just see. This is what it's going to look like when we have this. Wait, that's not what I want. Hold on. I think I got to do this maybe. There we go. All right. So we're just waiting here, folks.
Nice.
Thank you all for being here. Nothing has happened. If you're coming in late, they kind of had a little bit of a argument about the the
guidelines.
The guidelines.
Yeah. So what happens in any sentencing in any case is that they'll do a pre-sentence investigation, and that's where like probation will go out and they'll interview, and they'll basically come to a conclusion with recommendations to the judge based on their interviews of individuals, including the defendants. And at that point, both sides get it. The judge gets it. All of them read it. And then in Michigan, they use sentencing guidelines. Like we do not have those in, at least not in the form that they have them in Michigan. Michigan seems to be, to some degree, mirroring what the federal courts do because they have federal sentencing guidelines. And so what happened initially is that they were going through the various factors that are taken into account and the number of points that each of those factors has. It has a range. And so the defense was making their objections to what the state was asking for. They'd make their arguments. The judge would listen. She'd give them an answer as to whether or not she agreed with the state in terms of their analysis of whether those points should be applied or not. So we went through all that. I think what's left will be devastating for all of us. It sounds like the judge is going to be reading in victim impact statements from, I'm assuming, all of the parents, or at least some of the parents. And probably, she said she got a ton of statements that were sent in from people all over the country. I don't know how many of those she'll read in, but I imagine we're going to hear some of it. So it should be interesting. And then the judge will lay down the sentences. I anticipate, because of the threats by Crumbley, James Crumbley, that he will likely get a little more time. And I think that they've been in custody for about 2 years. So that time counts. So whatever time she is going to sentence them to, it will be reduced by the amount of time, the number of days that they've spent in jail awaiting trial.
So let me ask you guys, what do you think? So this is how it looks. This is new for me and for Bob doing this on this program. Love having the chat up. This is what it will look like. You know, obviously, if we have the chat up while the the testimony, which is fine. I don't mind. It's fine with me. I don't know what you guys think, but the screen is obviously going to be a little bit smaller if we have the chat up. So like this is what it looks like with the chat, and this is what it looks like without. What do you think, Bob? Do we keep it up during?
I don't
What do you
know.
guys think? What do you guys think? Let us know.
I'd rather have the bigger picture of the courtroom, but I mean, the chat is such a huge feature. I mean, but everybody's seeing it on their YouTube, right? Anyway,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think people are saying.
I mean, because we're super teeny either way.
Yeah,
which I don't mind. I don't care.
Yeah,
What do you think? What do you think?
No, it looks like the majority is bigger picture of the court, so that's fine.
Yeah.
But when it's just you and me, I think it's cool to have it up because
totally.
And it's not that like while we're waiting here, we can. Then it's not that bad. Then it's see that's fine. So yeah, all right. So that's what.
That's great.
Robert was talking. So Bob, you missed a ton of stuff, huh? When you're, was it killing you not to? Did Allie lay down any laws like you are not going live on this trip?
Yes, she did. She did. She
you wanted to, didn't you? So bad.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that podcast put a hit piece out on me when I was gone. So the day I landed, people were like, "Oh, this podcast did a hit piece on you on my Delphi coverage." So obviously, and I tried diligently not to look at that. Somebody sent me the transcript of it. I didn't want to get irritated and have it infringe upon my well-earned vacation, so I didn't.
By the way, folks, if you're, I covered since Bob was on vacation, I was covering the Chad Daybell jury selection process, but we're going to go forward tomorrow, folks. Same thing that we did with this trial, dual stream. Me and Bob, we're going to cover Chad Daybell, and then we were just talking before we came on. We have some others because Chad Daybell is going to be about 8 to 10 weeks.
Yeah, long one.
Karen Reed's coming up, and obviously Bob is not going to be streaming once Delphi starts because that's May. So we're going to kind of work out what we're going to do. But at the very least, tomorrow we start dual stream of the Storm.
I'll definitely. But like Jay was saying, like the Karen Reed thing is just as toxic online
so toxic.
Is the Delphi thing. I don't know if I'm up for it, but it's a fascinating trial. It just is a fascinating trial.
Absolutely.
So I don't know. If I decide, ultimately I'll be streaming Chad with you up until the point where I have to make a decision whether or not I pivot to Reed. The problem with Reed is if that goes and I'm doing the entire trial, it's pretty shitty for me to bail if it runs into Delphi, because Delphi is going to be different. As we sit here right now, it doesn't appear that the judge is going to allow for that trial to be streamed, which is going to be a huge task. That means that I'm going to be out in Delphi, going into the courtroom, doing the best that I can to take as many notes as I can to try to give people updates and, let them know what went on that day in court. Which is not optimal. It's like, it's just really difficult to sit there because you're trying to observe, everything in the room. And when you're having to write, and write notes, it's like, you can't watch the witnesses. It's not optimal, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, we could always do kind of like a thing where maybe we like ask our patrons or our patrons or like our our members, like what do they want us to do? I mean, potentially, this just occurred to me, but I don't even know if this is like too much. But like potentially, since Karen Reed is Eastern time and Chad is like Mountain time, we could potentially do a little bit before, like in the mornings of Karen, cover Chad, and then like or do like just this is what we could do, Bob. We could cover Daybell, and then like at night, maybe like our mods or someone like give us like the highlights, and then we cover that. I don't know. We'll figure something.
Yeah,
out.
We'll figure it out. Like it'll be. I think both cases are fascinating. I wish we could cover them all, because it's like I love it. We'll figure it out, man. Like, because that's true. There is a 3-hour gap with the Mountain Time and Eastern, right? Or is that 2-hour gap? Yeah. Pacific is 3.
It's
So
it's two. It's 2. Yeah. So like there
Yeah.
tomorrow it'll be 10:30. Well, 10:30 their time, which is.
So openings tomorrow. That'll be great. What's the makeup of the jury? Do we know?
Good question, guys. I think it's 10 and 8, 10 men, 8. What do you guys know? I'm sure probably Dizzy knows, but do you guys know what the makeup of the jury is? Why does it seem like it's paused?
Hey, what's up, Sleuthie? What's up, y'all? We see y'all in here.
This is weird because it says it's live, but it clearly 10 men, 8 women. Thank you, guys. Why does this say live, but it clearly does not look live? So let me just see what's going on here. Oh wow, Associated Press is covering it.
What, the sentencing?
Yeah,
it's a big deal.
What do we think? Do we like this kind of view? We can see them better, obviously, as opposed to seeing the.
Yeah, I kind of like that angle. Oh, that's a good one.
And like you said, Bob, since the beginning, some people may have slept on this, but this was like a massive case for. Well, they're frozen now too, so I guess it's not just law and crime. Looks like they're frozen the same thing. This is weird. I wonder if the feed cut out because it looks like they're both paused at the same. Oh no! All right, we're back. All right. Hey everyone! Thanks so much for being here. Looks like clearly we're waiting for the judge.
All rise.
All right, go time. Go time.
Be seated.
Recording in progress.
What?
That was Zoom. She must be zooming it.
Yeah.
That had that. That was definitely a Zoom.
Your Honor, calling People versus James Crumbley, case number 22279-989 FH. Calling People versus Jennifer Crumbley, case number 22279-990 FH.
Thank you. Good morning, Mark. Case on behalf of people.
Karen McDonald on behalf of the people. Good morning, Your Honor. Marielle Lehman on behalf of James Crumbley, who is seated to my right.
And I'm Shannon Smith on behalf of Jennifer Crumbley, who's seated to my right.
Good morning. Now we're going to conduct the oral victim impact statements, correct?
Your Honor, if I could have just a couple of very brief moments. I neglected to make an argument on OB9 earlier. If the court could just allow me to make a very brief record, I would appreciate it.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Very briefly, People versus McGraw 484 Mich 120 is a 2009 case which indicates that the sentencing guidelines and scoring of those guidelines are limited to the sentencing offense. Obviously, we have 4 separate counts in the information in this case.
Mm-hmm.
People versus Vanilla Machado, that's a hyphenated name, 489 Mich 412, is a 2011 case which states that you cannot aggregate offenses for the purposes of scoring. So where they're separate, in that case, it was assaults. They couldn't aggregate the assaults for the purposes of scoring, that each assault had to be scored separately. In this case, the score for offense variable 9 is 100 for the multiple deaths that occurred for the deaths of the 4 students. Mm-hmm. I'm objecting to the scoring of 100 under Bonilla Machado because each death is supposed to be counted separately and individually and not aggregated for multiple deaths. And that was the only objection I wanted to make.
Mr. Keese, I'm going to allow you to address that. I think you already did, but
I did, Judge. Yes.
Okay.
If probation has anything to add to it, for Ms. Wheeler, but
right.
We've already made this argument.
Ms. Wheeler, anything else?
Judge, only the sentencing guideline manual states that you cannot aggregate victims of separate crimes. But I think the defense argued earlier that this wasn't a separate crime. And the shooting occurred in a span of 8 minutes. It was not one shooting and then a half hour later. It was a very quick possession.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. All right, again, I believe it's correctly scored, but
Thank you for allowing me to make the record,
Sure,
Your Honor.
no problem, no problem. All right, and then with regard to victim impact statements.
Yes, Judge. Yeah, we-
Sure. Good morning. I wasn't doing a great job at the French pronunciation of your name, Nicole Beausoleil, correct?
Correct.
Was that right?
Beausoleil.
All right.
Beausoleil.
What do you have to say?
Um,
All right. What do you have to say?
Oh boy,
I would,
this is gonna be rough.
Yes,
Everyone
folks.
prepare yourselves.
We always say if you need to take a break, take a break. Take care of your mental health. This is going to be tough, folks.
This is gonna be tough.
I would like to start with the person that matters the most. Madison, she was a kind soul. She always had a smile on her face. She lit up the room when she walked in. Her laugh I could listen to all day. It was infectious. Her big sister skills were undeniable, and she took that role very seriously. Madison was smart, funny, loving, passionate, determined, and genuine. Her expectations were high, and at times we needed to let her fall. She needed to be reminded that not everything is perfect, even if she wanted it to be. Madison had an influence that most never achieved. Sometimes I would listen to a poem she wrote or watched her create art with no tracing, just pure talent. She would talk about college and what majors she would like to do and what would be most helpful to society. The passion that she had for everything and everyone was remarkable. I would catch myself watching her and thinking to myself, how lucky am I? I'm the one that gets to be her mom. What did I do to deserve a perfect person? She will be the best thing to ever happen to me at such a young age myself. I grew up because of her. We grew together. I learned from her. I mattered because of her. From the moment she was born, I promised myself that I would be there no matter what. Through the falls, heartbreak, letdowns, and struggles, I would be there. I would listen, learn, and love every moment. I wouldn't miss a thing. I would always protect her. On November 30th, 2021, exactly 17 years, 6 months, and 13 days made me break my first promise, and it will hurt for eternity. As her mom, I didn't protect her. First, I'd like to say thank you to the prosecution team. I say thank you to you all. Saying thank you really doesn't seem enough anymore. The countless hours you've worked, the time away from your family, and always taking our feelings into consideration. Karen and Mark, the work you've put into getting all the facts, speaking to us like we matter, and never wavering from your goal. It speaks volumes of the people you are, and I'm proud to call you a part of Madison's voice. Advocates and Jen, I'm not sure where to start. You've all seen me hit points in this tragedy that some days I wasn't sure who I was. One minute I'm laughing, next I'm crying, and sometimes I'm just silent. Either way, one thing stayed consistent. You always listened. Jen, you're not just a friend, you are family. My mind keeps going back to something during the trials. Something that is almost on repeat like a broken record. It's something as a mother I can't understand, and honestly I don't think any mother would understand. It was when Jennifer said it wouldn't do anything different. I'm putting a little emphasis on different, as I know life throws us things that are out of our control. But life takes turns and eventually puts them back in our control. Like giving you a hint when something needs to change. I want to compare a few things to see through my perspective. As I know things are different about the events and how we see them from the events on November 30th. while your son was hearing voices and asking for help. I was helping Madison pick out her senior classes. While you were purchasing a gun for your son and leaving it unlocked. I was helping her finish her college essays.
Oh, man.
While you dropped him off at school upset that he was failing class. I texted Madison, drive safe, it's slick outside, have a good day. When you got a call to meet at the school about your son and how it interfered with your day. I was rearranging my schedule so I could take Madison to get her oil changed for the first time. When you left without hesitation and not taking him home. I was worried if she'd be okay driving in the first snowfall of the season and if she brought a coat. When you walked out of the office with a steady pace after hearing an active shooter. I ran from my home and started driving, trying not to break the law. When you were on the phone for 10 minutes with each other trying to figure out where the gun was. I was on the phone with her father and family trying to figure out where she was. When you left the Myers without knowing where your son was, I was desperately trying to get there as soon as possible. When you knew the gun was missing, you called the police, knowing it was your son who took it. I was having family call every hospital describing what she looked like. When you texted, Ethan, don't do it. I was texting Madison, I love you, please call Mom. When you found out about the lives your son took that day, I was still waiting for my daughter in a parking lot. When you questioned the reasoning on why you would do this, I was questioning if I was doing enough to find her. When you got a chance to speak with your son, seeing him alive and showing no support, I was watching families reunite with their children, waiting for my moment. When you asked him why, I was waiting for the answer onto why the last bus never came. When the police showed up at your house, you didn't understand why they were there. And I was asking police if they checked every possible location and if I could go search too. When you texted about not losing your job and you needed a lawyer, I was still calling my daughter because she came first in all parts of my life. When you could leave your house, I was still a prisoner in Myers. When you worried about what people thought of you and feeling threatened, I was learning your son threatened my daughter and fatally shot her in the head. When you drove to get your burner phones for communication, I was laying on the floor in Myers for hours crying because I forgot how to speak. When you checked into your first hotel, I was telling Madison's 11-year-old sister she was gone. When you cared more about yourself and getting alcohol and supplies, I was identifying my daughter in a medical office wishing I could take her place.
Oh.
While you were hiding, I was planning her funeral. And while you were running away from your son and your responsibilities, I was forced to do the worst possible thing a parent could do. I was forced to say goodbye to my Madison. We all see things different. Some prioritize and some don't. Accountability can only be given if you actually try it in the first place. As a parent, we all make mistakes. This is a normal way of life. Usually when mistakes happen, we learn from them. We try to fix it or talk it over. But continuing to make the same mistake over and over again is no longer a mistake, it's a choice. That becomes a decision. Those decisions that you made ultimately took my daughter's life. Because you decided that you didn't want to parent and listen to your son. You took the right away for me to be a mother. You do not get to decide that. You do not get those privileges. You are not above anyone. I love being a mom. It's the one thing that I'm truly great at. You cared more about your well-being than the one life that you should put above anyone, your child. And because of that, you both took 4 beautiful children away from this world. Being a parent is the part of life that you should hold to the highest level. It's an honor to be a mother or a father. Even when you think you have done your best, you continue to do more. Unfortunately, you never made it to level 1. You say you wouldn't do anything different. Well, that really says on what type of parents you are, because there's a lot of things I would do different. But the one thing I would have wanted to be different was to take that bullet that day so she could continue to live the life she deserved. You show no remorse, no respect or compassion for our family. The same traits that you've bestowed upon your son. The traits that have torn my family into pieces. The lack of compassion that you have shown is outright disgusting. Not only did your son kill my daughter, but you both did as well. The words involuntary should not be a part of your offense. Everything you did that day, months prior, and days after were voluntary acts of your son to commit a murder. Not just one, but multiple. Shaking your head during a verdict is the utmost disrespectful thing I have ever witnessed. At that moment, you felt your life is more valuable than my daughter's. I will say that will never be true. You created a life that you took for granted. You decided that parenting wasn't a priority. Putting your child first should be the only priority. You didn't, and because of that, I've lost my daughter. I had to get answers after her death. Watching the video, hearing testimony on how your son executed my daughter, watching him put the gun to her head as she covered her head and pulled the trigger. Seeing pictures of her laying in her own pool of blood, knowing her body sat there for hours, that rigor mortis had already started to set in. So that when I identified her, her body was in a state I couldn't imagine. Hearing her sister scream over and over again night after night, watching her family and her friends fall apart. You created all of this. You created your son's life, which then allowed this to be his path, which should be yours as well. You don't get to look away. You don't get to cry. I didn't get that choice. You failed as parents. The punishment that you face will never be enough. It will never bring her back. It will never be a loss that you have suffered, and it will never heal the pain. Because one day you're going to be able to see your son, visit, hear his voice, possibly laugh, maybe see him grow. I will never see that again. The so-called loss that you say you have suffered doesn't even compare to the loss of a child. Your Honor, I request that the maximum sentence be enforced, as it will never come close to the life sentence I was given. A life sentence that I didn't ask for, but a choice that was made for me. A life that I will suffer because of their negligence. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Oh man.
Man, God. Oh man.
Good morning. Can you tell me your name?
Yes, Jill Swatley.
All right, go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Judge Cheryl Matthews, for your time on this case. I know it hasn't been easy on both. Thank you also to Karen McDonald and the entire prosecution team. We appreciate your efforts. Your Honor, my trauma and devastation is hard to put to words, but I have done so in my letter to you. I would also like to mention Justin's brothers, Nathan and Clay. They are now forced to live a life without their beloved middle brother Justin. My son Justin was the least deserving of his fate. He was the best son that any mother could pray for. Justin was brave, spending his final moments protecting a fellow student. He was hardworking, a lettered athlete, a top honor student. He was kind and inclusive to all. He was full of love and joy. His future was so very bright and full of possibilities. His passing has touched so many family members, friends, students, and the community in general. The ripple effects of both James and Jennifer's failures to act have devastated us all. This tragedy was completely preventable. If only they had done something, Your Honor, anything, to shift the course of events on November 30th, then our 4 angels would be here today, and Justin would be getting ready to celebrate his 20th birthday on the 18th of this month. If only, Your Honor, they had taken their son to get counseling instead of buying him a gun. If only they had secured that gun. If only they had spoken up that day in the counseling office. If only they had checked his backpack. If only they had taken him home or taking him to counseling instead of abandoning him at that school, I wouldn't be standing here today. Your Honor, I don't know what's in their hearts. I'm not a mind reader. But I only know the facts of this case. And the facts of this case, both cases, have been deeply disturbing. What I would like to share with the shooter's parents is an example of what love looks like between a mother and her son. This is what Justin wrote to me on one of the last birthdays that we celebrated together. Dear Mom, words cannot describe how thankful I am for you. You have been nothing but an amazing mother for as long as I can remember. Thank you for being a role model. Thank you for showing me what it's like to never give up. You inspire me to do better each and every day. I love you so much. Love, Justin. It is devastating and heartbreaking that it doesn't appear that either of you cherished or even wanted your son. But I wholeheartedly wanted and cherished mine. You have failed your son and you have failed us all. This failure had deadly consequences that can never be undone, that can never be made right. I am asking, Your Honor, for the maximum sentence allowed. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, man. These are so powerful, man.
Seriously.
Oh, my God.
Whew. I can't even imagine just talking about having
I'd be a wreck.
and like it's her talking about having to watch the video. Like
Oh,
it's
dude.
beyond. It's unimaginable.
I can't like not cry just watching it. There's no way. Like I don't even know if I'd be able to do it.
I would say no. I can't. Like unless like I had to. Like I don't think I could ever.
Man.
So Honorable Judge Matthews, for the second time in 6 months, I find myself standing in front of a packed courtroom, a victim. This time, I'm here to address a different judge and the parents of the deeply disturbed teenager that murdered my son. This is my opportunity to try to describe just how much the horrific event that took place back on November 30th, 2021 has impacted my life. It's my belief that an impact statement should not just describe how this particular event impacted me. I feel that it should also be impactful towards all who hear it. And in your case, Judge, I hope these words impact you in a way that influence your decisions here today. As I look around at all the lawyers, police officers, media folks, and the other victims, I can't help but ask myself, what could I possibly say that this whole scenario doesn't already say? This is messed up. Most people will never have to make a victim impact statement throughout the course of their lives. And the fact that the victims speaking here today are doing so for the second time in 6 months should speak volumes in and of itself. This is not normal. Living a life like this is not normal. So how does it affect a normal guy? To be completely honest with you, it remains a rather difficult and uncomfortable question to answer. In my previous impact statement, I've expressed many of my day-to-day struggles, from uncontrolled emotional outbreaks to sleepless nights to not being able to focus on normal daily tasks. Yeah, it's fair to say that I live every day with pain, anger, heartache, regret, anxiety, stress, you name it. They are all there, wreaking havoc in my once normal life. They say that time heals all wounds. Well, we're coming up on 2.5 years now, and I can assure you that the wounds are still as fresh as they were on that tragic day. And with this hole that has been left in my life still glaringly obvious, I fight every day to not lose more of myself within that very hole. I have spent the last 30 years of my life busting my butt to support a family, raise children, and try to set myself up for some peace and quiet in the golden years of life. But the unthinkable has happened. And that peace and quiet I've worked so hard for may never come to be. At least not to the degree that I've always imagined it. Literally every single aspect of my life has been affected by this tragedy. And I could spend a long time describing in detail just how it has impacted me, but it seems like it would be way easier for me to just tell you how this tragedy hasn't impacted me, because there's simply nothing on that list. Now that the verdict is out on this monumental case, I feel strongly that it has caught the attention of most parents across the country. The overwhelming facts in this case were all that was necessary to prove that James and Jennifer Crumbley not only neglected their son by failing to get the necessary mental care that was clearly needed, but provided him the very tools necessary to carry out those heinous acts of violence. It was these very facts that allowed not just one, but 2 full juries to find both of them guilty of involuntary manslaughter. I will always maintain the opinion that the facts that were presented in these cases were strong enough to convince any jury of their guilt, and that the verdict would have been the same regardless of where the trial was held. As I have maintained throughout the course of the past couple of years, being the parent of a murdered child tends to cause you to seek out the maximum penalties allowed for each guilty verdict derived from any of the criminal charges. I think this stance is completely justified, and would be so for any parent in the same position as mine. However, this is a court of law where a person is innocent until proven guilty, and the defendant has the right to dispute the facts of the charges against them. That being said, during the course of both of these trials, I did my best to capture every word and process all the facts. This is important because there is value in these facts, not just in the thousands and thousands of man-hours invested in gathering, processing, and organizing the evidence, but also for being able to use that evidence to establish the cold, hard truth of this tragic situation, that James and Jennifer Crumbley failed in their parental responsibilities as they pertain to the shooter, who was their son. The cold truth that shows that they did nothing to address the obvious signs of a deteriorating mental state of mind clearly present within their son. And of course, the very hard truth that shows that they provided their son with exactly what he wanted to use to do what he did, and failed miserably to secure it properly. One would probably think that in order for something like this, or something of this magnitude to even happen at all, there would have to be a ton of things that went wrong. Although there were some things that definitely went wrong that day, for several of those things, I believe that if they had been handled correctly, we wouldn't be here right now. And James and Jennifer Crumbley carry the bulk of the responsibility needed to handle those things. During their trials, the overall similarities between the two were evident, and I believe this is why they were both convicted. Numerous facts that were the same for both trials showed clearly that the parents failed their son, and ultimately the entire community. With Jennifer, the thing that resonates most is that she stated that even knowing what she knew now, she still wouldn't have changed a thing. I almost died when she said that. 4 precious lives were lost at the hands of her son, by means that she helped provide. She saw the drawing of the murder, drawn with the hands of her son. She sat and heard the request of the counselor and did nothing. And she still says that she wouldn't have changed a thing. I just don't understand how someone can be that heartless to make a statement like that. The blood of our children is on your hands too. This is but one reason why I feel that Jennifer should receive the maximum amount for her sentence. The facts presented should be all the others that you should need. With her distinct lack of remorse and overall unethical understanding of the tragedy, I feel that the maximum amount of time available is needed for her to be able to fully comprehend the gravity of her actions and the lack thereof. With James, there were a couple of things that jumped out at me in particular, but one thing that is the toughest to digest is the fact that when the verdict was being read, he sat there and shook his head in total disagreement, as if to suggest that the jury was wrong and that there were no grounds for a guilty verdict. I was dumbfounded to see him shake his head with such disbelief, an action that only suggests that he truly believes he did nothing wrong. How could you possibly think that? 4 precious lives were lost at the hands of your son by means that he helped provide. He saw the drawing of the murder, drawn with the hands of his son. He sat and heard the request of the counselor and did nothing. I just don't understand how someone can so arrogantly dawdle in a pool of self-pity without being able to say one thing to justify themselves. The blood of our children is on your hands too. This is but one reason why I feel James should receive the maximum amount for his sentence. The facts presented should be all the others that you need. With this distinct lack of remorse and overall unethical understanding of the tragedy, I feel that the maximum amount of time available is needed for him to be able to fully comprehend the gravity of his actions and the lack thereof. Throughout the course of all of this, and I'm talking from way back in the beginning, I just can't get over the fact that this tragedy was completely avoidable. There were some pretty obvious signs that were completely overlooked, and the bulk of the responsibilities to address those signs lied on the parents, and they failed. Across the board, failed. They willfully ignored the cries of their child and selfishly put themselves before helping him. This type of blatant disregard is undeniably unacceptable. It is a large reason why the events of that day were able or were allowed to happen, and another reason why I feel they both need the maximum amount of time available to be able to fully comprehend the gravity of their actions and the lack thereof. We all know that having children is a big responsibility. Although extremely rewarding, it starts out pretty scary. I mean, let's face it, they don't exactly come with instructions. There's no mute button, and unfortunately, no pause or rewind buttons either. Oh yeah, and there are times in the beginning that they really smell. Yet we still have them. We still want that responsibility, even though it's not very clear what it all entails. But how can we accept that responsibility and not act responsibly towards that child? It doesn't add up. A child, even if he is an oopsie child, deserves the same amount of love, compassion, and care that every other child gets. A child deserves someone who is confident enough to lead by example. Because let's face it, it wasn't that child's choice to come into this world. You made them. and it's your responsibility to teach them how to live. It's your responsibility to set a good example. It's plain and simple, just like that, ladies and gentlemen. And the sooner we can figure that out, the better we all will be. Being a parent is hard work, but if it's done correctly, it can be the most rewarding work you ever do. There is no one that can tell you how to do it, because each child is so precious and unique. I mean, there's no other one like them in the entire world, and that says a lot. So cherish your one and onlys, and never give them up. Never give up on them, excuse me. The results of doing so can be catastrophic and can affect the lives of so many other people. Well, I ask for you all to go home today and hug your kids and make sure they know you are there for them and make sure that they are all right. It's so crucial for the whole of our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shulman.
Well done, sir. Well
These
done.
are, I've sat in courtrooms and heard impact statements from victims' families, man, but these three have been so incredibly well-spoken and heart-wrenching, man. These are blowing me away. Like really blowing me away.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying everyone needs to watch these.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, go ahead.
Raina St. Julie.
Our 10-year-old little brother had to learn how to write a eulogy for his sister before he even learned how to write essays. November 30th, 2021, all our parents did was send us off to school. Yet the next time they see Hannah is to recognize her lifeless body in a medical examiner's office. I met up with Hannah and her friend during school that day. When we split ways to go back to class, I just looked back and smiled. I didn't say goodbye. I never got to say goodbye. I never got to remind her that I love her, that she's my everything, the person I want to walk through life with side by side. I thought our future was a given. Of course she'd play her first high school basketball game that night, get ready for all the other school dances, have her JV and varsity season for all the sports she played, get her driver's license, play her lacrosse season, have her first date, prom, graduation. She never got a chance for any of that. She didn't even get her 15th, 16th, 17th, or 18th birthday. These are only some of the high school experiences she never got to have, but it is absolutely nothing compared to the rest of everything she had going for her future. That list is eternal. Hannah's life had only started to begin. 12:51 p.m., November 30th, 2021, that was the moment I became aware of the fragility of our mortality. Hannah, who was healthy, Hannah, who was only 14, shot 4 times. 12.5% of the bullets shot that day were at her. She took her last breath in her own pool of blood in a school she hadn't even been in for 3 months. Alone for 7 minutes while police passed by her, bleeding out as a security guard failed to put a tourniquet on her, dying as EMS took more than 10 minutes after the shooter had been detained to even give aid to her. Our Japanese grandma would often worry about anything bad happening to us because she knew how dangerous it is here compared to Japan. She told me on FaceTime that Hannah would respond with a laugh, saying, "Don't worry, I'm a fast runner, I'll outrun them." It wasn't possible for Hannah to outrun the bullets bought by you, Jennifer Crumbley, which were fired by the 9mm Sig Sauer that you, James, gifted to your son.
Wow.
Both used to murder Hannah, Justin, Tate, and Madison. The fact is, no matter what you try to make yourself believe, Jennifer, you did fail as a parent, both of you. To love and to be loved, that is the human experience. It was up to you guys to show your son that. Instead of giving quality time and compassion, you gift your son a gun you knew caused extraordinary damage. There's a reason your kid didn't use the other 2 firearms or the .22 ammunition you own. I believe your actions cannot even be confined into the word failure. Your mistakes created our everlasting nightmare.
Wow.
So yes, you are still a danger to society because even after serving 2 years, you have yet to admit to your wrongdoings. And we know that when we do not learn from our mistakes, we repeat history. You call yourself a victim. The difference between you and Hannah, Justin, Tate, and Madison you and my family, you and all the students there that day, is that we didn't have a hand in causing this. You caused the most cruel thing I could ever imagine. You guys made loving Hannah so painful. That is not a narrative, that is reality. For that, unless you have a time machine or the ability to stop time, there is no existing punishment or rehabilitation that will ever be enough. Because there is no way that the one life I have, I now have to live without Hannah, my little sister, my best friend, my other half. To me, that makes the maximum sentence being 15 years too short. Hannah didn't even have 15 years to live. Jennifer, you stated that even after knowing everything you know now, you wouldn't do anything different. I cannot fathom that. I would do anything to hear her footsteps coming up the stairs. You don't have to roll your eyes, it's on video that she said that. To not have an empty seat at the dining table, to have her come into my room and ask which clothes to order, to see her napping on the couch, to laugh and share a look when we accidentally say the same thing at the same time. There's not a day that goes by that I wish I hadn't run out of that building. If I knew what I know now, I would do everything differently in a heartbeat. I hope time makes you think differently. One day, I hope you would have chosen to care for your son, teach him how to love and to be loved, that you would not choose to buy the bullets that enter children's bodies, that you would not choose to omit relevant important information to the counselor Sean Hopkins and Dean of Students Nicholas Ejak that could have helped their incompetent brains in one shared brain cell to decide to act and search the backpack, that you wouldn't still choose to hide from accountability when you're the reason we had to hide for our lives, that you would choose to save Hannah, Justin, Tate, and Madison. Like my mother said, both of you should implore that even on your worst days, it's the tomorrow Hannah doesn't get. The tomorrow she wanted to live so badly, the tomorrow that she should have. I can never do Hannah justice when talking about her. She's all I want to talk about, and yet I would need a lifetime and still wouldn't have the right words to capture incandescence, humor, thoughtfulness, kindness, or loyalty. She's always there for you, helping without a second thought. She's always sharing, whether it's her smile, her food, her clothes, her crafts, her joy. She's funny. It's a given. She brings people together. Whether it's her contagious laughter or sarcastic wit, you will be laughing right along with her. She's noticing the small things, new shoes, new haircut, cute jewelry, but even more importantly, she makes you feel seen. She's extremely spirited. Her energy is unmatched on or off the court. She dresses up every holiday, every spirit day, the first one to put up Christmas lights, or any lights for that matter, not even realizing she was a light for so many others. She's the one who would not only playfully roll her eyes and smile when I would say I'm taller than her as I look up to her. Not only did I look up to her physically, because yes, she was taller, but as a whole, as a human being. She isn't perfect, but she's Hannah, and to me that's as close as you can get. I can't convey what losing Hannah has done to me. I miss her with every breath I take. I think going forward without her is something I'll never be able to fully navigate. I believe the word sad is inappropriate to use because it does nothing to capture the hurt or the way my soul shattered. I didn't know. I've never felt every atom of my body igniting from anger until Hannah was murdered. I didn't know what it was like to want to stop waking up in the morning until she wasn't here. I've never known pain that is forever until seeing Hannah in a casket. I didn't know it was possible to feel so isolated even when you're surrounded by people. I didn't know how it feels to not know yourself at all. I have no idea who I am without Hannah. She's my happy, she's my home. I look for Hannah in everyone I meet, every place I go, and it's exhausting when I'm met with disappointment every time. But it's the world, it's all the people she would have met. I grieve for them too. To have that chance of Hannah being in your life taken away from you is a tragedy in and of itself. She's more of a person than you two combined times a trillion could ever even hope to be. But when the day comes that you re-enter society in 13 years, I hope you live more like Hannah. I hope you live every moment to the fullest like Hannah. I hope you laugh every day like Hannah. And I hope you love unconditionally like Hannah. That's it.
Wow.
Great
What
job.
an incredible young woman, man.
Wow.
God.
Better than I would have done.
That's just incredible. Man. It's not the last we're going to hear of that young woman, I guarantee
Find
that.
myself in
Mr. St. Julian.
Thank you. Find myself in a rather odd state of mind today. Rather emotionally blank right now. Part of that is having to do this again. Part of that is I'm mostly a private person, and the idea of having to pour my heart out again is irritating. And I can't match the eloquent words that have come before me in the previous impact statements. So I'll limit my words today. The defendants, through their choices, through their indifference and gross negligence, enabled their son to murder my daughter Hannah and 3 other children. They chose to stay quiet. They chose to ignore the warning signs. And now, as we've heard through all of the objections, they continue to choose to blame everyone but themselves. Every single objection, I think, that the council said this morning put the blame somewhere else, their son, not them. I stood before the court several months ago and spoke about the impact that Hannah's murder had on myself and my family. Nothing has changed since then. It's impossible for me to truly convey the complete impact of my daughter's loss. Hannah's murder has destroyed a large portion of my very soul. I've said these words before. It's still the truth. I remain a shell of the person that I used to be. I think of her and miss her constantly. Every day is a battle to attempt to move forward, struggle to get out of bed, to go through the motions of everyday life. Simple everyday sights and actions bring pain, as I think what it should have been like with Hannah there with us. I think of all the good times that we've shared together as a family, and more on all of the memories that will never be. I will never think back fondly on her high school and college graduations. I will never walk her down the aisle as she begins the journey of starting her own family. I am forever denied the chance to hold her or her future children in my arms. A few words describing Hannah can in no way fully capture her truly beautiful, caring soul or impart her unlimited potential. Hannah was absolutely beautiful and thoughtful person. She was always the first person to notice when someone had a problem and the first to go out of her way to offer help. She was incredibly curious and talented. She continually tried new things. She crafted homemade jewelry, tried cooking her own recipes, and played several sports. She was a record holder in track and a leader of her school volleyball and basketball teams. She also hoped to join her older sister on the lacrosse team in the spring. She had aspirations of a career dedicated to helping people. All of this is lost because of the defendant's actions and choices. My position regarding the defendant's sentencing and their future has evolved through their trials. At first, I was focused on the importance of getting a guilty verdict, to have the message conveyed to the public that this type of behavior and choices are not acceptable. I didn't have strong feelings about their sentencing. It was just something that would be determined by the system. My view, however, has changed as the defendant's level of defiance has grown. Instead of acknowledging any mistakes, they continue to show no remorse. They take no accountability. They and their lawyers continue to try to change the narrative and portray the defendants as victims of the prosecution team. They blame everyone but themselves and make threats of retribution. The facts have already been presented. The jury has found them guilty. Multiple juries have found them guilty. Hannah, Madison, Tate, and Justin are the ones who have lost everything, not the defendants. As such, I ask that this court to sentence the defendants to the maximum allowable penalty of 10 to 15 years in prison. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for being here. Mr. Mears.
Tate Mears' dad. First of all, Mark, Karen, the whole team, strong work. Everybody said you couldn't do it, and you did it. For our family, it's not time to celebrate. This tragedy has taken an incredible toll on our family. So our family's not going to give the Crumbley family a second of our time up here. It's time to turn our focus now. This is the low-hanging fruit. Now it's time to turn our focus to Oxford schools who played a role in this tragedy. You know, I hear this morning when we're listening to all the objections and hear Sharon talking about protecting the criminals' civil rights, constitutional rights. Where's my rights being protected? I fight for everybody in this room. My rights aren't being protected. Criminals' rights are more important than our rights, my rights. We are ready for our government to perform an investigation on this tragedy. Many don't know that our government has not investigated this murder. A pre-shooting investigation, a day of the shooting investigation, and a deep dive investigation into the horrible response to this tragedy, the disrespect shown to us families. The simple things, like trauma training for somebody like a Sheriff Bouchard, who we got to talk to on the day that we got to go identify Tate. And he referred to Tate as a girl because he was too busy that night working to cover it up. Instead of learning about every kid, Tate, Hannah, Justin, and Madison. It's time for the whole truth to come out. It's time to learn from this, from the purchase of the gun to the response. That's when real change happens. Is when we can look at something and we can evaluate it, apply lessons learned. That's when real change happens. Is Hannah St. Juliana's family ready for the truth? Justin Shilley's family ready to hear the truth? Nicole Baldwin's family ready to hear the truth? Tate Mears' family's ready to hear the truth. Quit denying us that. It's time to drive real change from this tragedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That concludes the victim impact statements.
There's no one else. You're not presenting anybody else.
Correct.
Ms. Smith, what would you like to say on behalf of the client?
Your Honor, my client would also like to make a statement. Would you like me to go first?
Oh boy.
Oh man.
You may both allocate.
Oh boy.
I didn't know what you were going
Either way first. It's up to you. You or your client.
Would you like to go first or would you like me to go first? I can go first. Okay. Do I stay here?
You can stay there.
Your Honor, is there any way she can have this handcuff off? Because she has multiple pages.
I'm okay. I'm right here. I don't have to shuffle.
You're okay? Okay.
I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Okay.
It's okay.
She said she's okay.
It's okay.
Go ahead, Ms. Hunter.
I sit here today to express my deepest sorrow for the families of Hannah, Tate, Madison, Justin, and to all those affected on November 30th, 2021. The driving weight this has taken on my heart and soul cannot be expressed into words. Just as I know there is nothing I can say that's going to ease the pain and suffering of the victims and their families. There's a quote I heard that rang true. Grief. For those of you who understand, no explanation is needed. And for those of us who do not, no description is possible. I've taken countless nights of lament over the anguish and shame I carry, knowing what my son did, the harm he caused innocent lives, the families, and to the entire Oxford community. I pray all the victims are the embodiment of God's mercy and peace, and that He heals your broken spirits. When I was on the stand, I was asked if I would have done anything different. I was horrified to learn my answer I would not have was completely misunderstood. That answer is true because my son did seem so normal. I didn't have a reason to do anything different. This was not something I foresaw. That was the intention of my answer and how I interpreted the question. With the benefit of hindsight and information I have now, my answer would be drastically different. If I even thought my son was capable of crimes like these, things would have absolutely been different. Even worse, when I learned during the police investigation that he had been planning a school shooting before November 30th. He was not the son I woke up. He was not the son I knew when I woke up on November 30th. The Ethan I knew was a good, quiet kid. He loved his pets, family vacations. My husband and I used to say we had the perfect kid. I truly believed that, and that's who I saw and thought I knew. As the details started emerging during discovery, I was horrified to learn concerning behaviors my son was reported doing at school. Refusing to take a makeup test he told us he took. Sleeping in class. Drawing pictures of guns on his assignments. Writing, quote, "My family is a mistake." Watching a video in class of a mass shooting that fatal day, along with internal communications that took place between his teachers and counselor, Mr. Hopkins. That he is, quote, "on my radar," and, quote, "he seems to be having a rough time," was never disclosed to us, his parents. The school claimed this was not abnormal behavior because of the pandemic and Oxford being a, quote, gun community. To say I was furious to learn this information is an understatement. This is not normal behavior to us and very different than what Ethan led us to believe was happening at school. Not only were you left in the dark about previous concerning behavior, but in the counselor's office that morning, none of those previous issues were brought to our attention. I can't stop thinking, had they been, the conversation
I'm just gonna pause this. I don't fucking understand why this is allowed. Why is this the law, Bob? They have to have a chance to speak.
Yeah,
I don't want
it's a statement, an allocution, they call it. Yeah, the defendant always has the opportunity to say something.
That morning would have been much different. That we would have taken a deep dive into what's really been going on with my son. I wonder if Hopkins and EJAC have those same regrets too. Instead, we are led to believe, not only from Hopkins and EJAC, but from Ethan as well, that this was an isolated event. We felt confident in trusting the professional's advice to let him stay in school that day. Quote, he does not pose a threat to himself or others. It was suggested that him being around peers would probably be good. We agreed. We were never asked to take him home that day. If that was discussed as the best course of action, we would have obliged. The prosecution keeps saying we didn't give them the big picture that morning in the counselor's office. But what they failed to acknowledge is the bigger picture the school did not give us. I'm not the same person I was prior to November 30th, 2021. This tragedy has changed who I am and has taught me some very valuable lessons. It's said in suffering we gain wisdom. I've also gained God. In the quiet hours of myself, I prayed to him about the deep impact this tragedy has had on the families and the endless pain no one should ever have to feel. For it is God who holds a true understanding of our pain. I've also learned to depend on him for peace and strength. Alone, I'm not strong enough. I've learned that we cannot tell or predict what will happen to us in this life. One day you wake up and everything can change. We can, however, decide what happens in us, how we take it, what we do with it. And that's what really matters in the end. That's the test of living, is how we take the unimaginable, the tragedies, the raw hardships, and make them a thing of worth and beauty. I've also learned to never think this could not happen to you, and stereotype that bad kids come from bad parents. The prosecution has tried to mold us into the type of parents society wants to believe are so horrible, only a school or mass shooter could be bred from. This is a very trivial assumption to have. We were good parents. We were the average family. We weren't perfect, but we loved our son and each other tremendously. Everything we strived for was to make sure our son had the best life we could give him, to grow up with traditions and experiences we had, to be the best person he could be. I know we did our best. The love I have for our son, mixed with regret for not seeing what was ahead, weighs heavily on me. My point is, this could be any parent up here in my shoes. Ethan could be your child, could be your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, your brother, your sister. Your child can make a fatal decision, not just with the gun, but a knife, a vehicle, intentionally or unintentionally. If there's anything the general public can take away from this, is that this could happen to you too. The tragedy has taught me the true meaning of unconditional love, as I watch my parents still love and care for me wholeheartedly, no matter what has happened. If there's nothing else I can do right in life, I do still love my son unconditionally, and perhaps that is my purpose. Your Honor, I don't envy the decision you have to make today. I understand this is a novel case, and punishment expectations are high, not just from the prosecution, but from all those affected as well. The heartbreaking journey these families have endured. Hang on, I have to back up. I missed my most important. I need to cross. A most valuable piece of wisdom I gained is the power of forgiveness. To forgive the prosecution for the slander and hate against me and my husband.
Oh, Mike.
Ms. McDonald, Mr. Keys, I have hated you with deep anger, but hate is too heavy as a cross to carry. I need to be set free of that burden and recognize that you are people just like me, imperfect, but a child of God. I know He wants good things to happen to you, and in any conflict, whatever the circumstances, He is there loving both sides. To the victims and the families, I stand today not to ask for your forgiveness, as I know it may be beyond reach, but to express my sincerest apologies for the pain that has been caused. Your Honor, I don't envy you in the decision you have to make today. I understand the punishment expectations are high from all sides. This heartbreaking journey families have endured is more than anyone should have to bear and acknowledge in its full depth. My time in confinement has been filled with deep remorse, regret, and grief over this tragedy. I have taken this one day at a time, trying to survive, navigate, and cope with the endless heartache, pain, and grief I feel for the families of Hannah, Justin, Madison, and Tate. I have also lost myself over my son's wrongdoing. I've been shredded by the public opinion of me, shamed as a horrible parent, pained to be a terrible person. But the worst howl I carry is my own self-judgment, remorse, and deep regret. I've been criticized, I don't show emotion, I'm unsympathetic, I don't cry enough, but alone I grieve. And if you were to look into me internally, you'd find I've died on the inside. I will be in my own internal prison for the rest of my life. Your Honor, I ask you to take consideration that I have been locked in a cell 23 hours a day, essentially in solitary confinement, for over 28 months, and that the court finds a fair and just sentence for me.
Thank you.
Fuck out of here. Boo.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you.
Oh,
Your
man.
Honor, as I pointed out in my sentencing memo, this was a no-win case. When we walked in the door, there are no winners here. Every single person just won this here.
Agreed.
And there's also no limit on the amount of sadness, grief, and horrific emotions that are felt across the board in this case. And when Mrs. Crumbley does express remorse, when she expresses sadness, there's a tendency, and there has been a tendency, for people to say she's shifting from sadness to the victims and putting it on herself. She's not doing that. There's an abundance of sadness. There's enough sadness to go around for all of the victims, for Mrs. Crumbley, for everyone involved in this case. It's not surprising that the victims have come in and obviously want the maximum sentence. There has been a narrative throughout this case that they believe is true. And this court knows that there is other information that was not a part of this case. And I believe this court knows the defense was hugely hamstrung, and I think the court was pained at times over what to do. I'm talking about not being able to call the medical professionals, not being able to call the shooter to the stand, not being able to cross-examine on various pieces of evidence.
I'm not convinced the shooter would have helped you.
Okay, well, all of those are obviously issues, but there were things that hamstrung the defense. And I do believe
the forensic records.
I do believe the shooter would have helped, and I do believe the forensic records would have helped. And I understand the court has already ruled on that. I understand that.
I didn't pause the victims because I have respect for them. Bob, is this helping the two of them rambling right now? Like this is just enraging me. You think this is going to make the judge give them less of a sentence based on what they're saying right now? This is making me so angry.
The judge knows her number. Like she came into court today knowing what she's sentencing him to. I mean, I've in all my years I've never gotten the sense that no matter how impactful, which every single victim impact statement was incredibly powerful in very different ways. I mean, you have to allow the victims' families to be able to say their words and speak their truths. But in terms of whether or not that sways judges, it just doesn't. I mean, they're doing their research. They're talking to their colleagues, other judges, and I mean, they're thinking about this consistently. Coming into a sentencing hearing. So she had she knew exactly what she's going to be sentencing up to now. As far as Jennifer Crumbley, she didn't take any acceptance of guilt at all. All she did was continue to blame everybody else and, try to walk back her, I wouldn't change anything that day. There was no acceptance of any kind of blame,
And now it seems like Shannon here is arguing with her about what went on in the trial. I mean, What the fuck?
No, it's not helpful.
I think the tendency, though, after hearing the narrative that has been made public, has been to make Jennifer Crumbley sound like a monster, to vilify her, to make her sound like a horrible mother, an evil person. And the truth is, it's an effort to put her in a category of other, to say this is not something that could happen to any of us. And it is. It is something that could happen to any of us. And people fail to realize what the sentencing memo shows the court through numerous letters of support, that Mrs. Crumbley does have a kind heart. She does have compassion. She has spent night after night crying, not for only herself and her son, but also for the victims and for what her son did and what she will live with, knowing he did, and what she missed all the years forward. At the end of the day, we asked the court to look at Mrs. Crumbley's role in the offenses. We asked the court to consider that while she did not oppose having a gun in the home, she was not the person who was responsible for storing the gun and believed it was being stored properly and that it was locked. Mrs. Crumbley obviously testified, and all of the evidence at trial showed she believed there was a string lock, a cable lock placed on the gun, on the weapon.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but that has really troubled me from your sentencing memo, because you spent a lot of time talking about the fact that she didn't know anything about the gun. She didn't lock it. She wasn't responsible for it. But at one time, she was texting her husband to see whether or not he got the gun and how much it was. She posted pictures of it as her son's Christmas present. She shot the gun. And I don't know if you're aware of this. I don't know if either side was aware of this, but the first jury determined that there was a claim that the gun was the responsibility solely of defendant James Crumbley. And Mrs. Crumbley testified that when she returned from the range with the shooter on November 27, it was the defendant James Crumbley who was responsible for the 6-hour retreat from the car and was supposed to keep it safe. The first jury recognized that the GPS admitted in the case shows that even prior to the defendant James Crumbley returning to the house, the shooter was videotaping the unlocked 6-hour in the kitchen of the home. So that's not true. That's not true. She also testified that a key to the cable lock was kept in a beer stein in the kitchen, but it's clear that the cable lock was clearly never opened.
Your Honor, first of all, the jury's finding about the timing of the GPS and when the gun video was made is not correct. The evidence at trial did not support that. We know that's not correct. Mrs. Crumbley left the gun in the car so that James Crumbley could put the gun in the house and store it correctly. Mrs. Crumbley, there were multiple cable locks in that house because there was more than one cable lock. There was not just the cable lock that was on the Sig Sauer. There was more than one.
I wouldn't recall that.
There were not more than one found, but whatever Ethan Crumbley did with the cable lock from the Sig Sauer, we don't know.
The gun wasn't locked.
Your Honor, factually, during Mrs. Crumbley's trial, it was not proven that the gun was not locked. I don't know what happened at James Crumbley's trial.
You know about his statements. The gun was never locked.
Whose statements?
Mr. Crumbley's statements.
I mean, if I'm the family right now in this courtroom, I am so pissed right like shut the fuck up, the trial's over. What are you talking about right now? Oh my.
Mr. Crumbley and Mrs. Crumbley talked about how the gun had been locked. In all of the evidence I saw. Well, Your Honor, obviously we have factual disputes.
Go on. I don't think the evidence has shown that she had no involvement with the gun.
I'm not saying no involvement. I said she supported the gun. She didn't object to the gun. But when it came down to it, probation writes in her narrative that she taught her son how to use the gun, and it's very obvious watching the evidence in the trial that she was not the one teaching him how to use the gun.
There's no evidence that you taught him how to use the gun.
When Mrs. Crumbley spoke, she acknowledged what the testimony was at trial about all of the different things that she wished had come to her attention from the school employees. And the prosecutor's office has said that the proposal the defense has made regarding Mrs. Crumbley is a slap in the face. And what's truly a slap in the face, not only to the victims in this case, but also to the Crumbleys, is how much the Oxford schools did fail the Crumbleys and all the victims. Because if Mrs. Crumbley had been presented any of those 5 things, things would be different and we would probably not be here today. I am asking this court, I know the court of public opinion is running high right now, emotions are running very high. There are many, many complicated issues with this case. It is a dynamic and different case than most cases. Mrs. Crumbley does have a good heart. This is a woman who had no felony history. She's a working mom who was very busy, did have a hobby.
I don't think there's anything wrong with this thing.
I'm just saying, largely the evidence at trial were some of those things, and Mrs. Crumbley did have an enormous amount of love for her son, and what she has been painted out to be in the media and throughout this case, and even throughout the victim impact statements today, is just not congruent with the people who know Mrs. Crumbley and know her heart. It's also not congruent with the text messages she sent right after the shooting about how she wished she would have died instead of one of the kids.
I don't think the verdict was about how feeling she is or how sad she is. I think the verdict was about behaviors that led up to that day.
Well, there has been an enormous amount of criticism about whether or not she's sad enough, and there was cross-examination extensively about whether she cried or not enough on the stand, or when during the videos that were played of police interviews and things like that. And then, on the same hand, when
I don't doubt that they were both in shock. I don't doubt that.
And at the end of the day, though, when she did cry, there was an objection about crying. And so Mrs. Crumbley from the very beginning has been damned no matter what way she went. This was the most horrific thing that could have happened to the community, to the victims, to these families. Absolutely horrific. At the end of the day, however, it's a unique and complicated case, and that is why I proposed the sentence I did. I don't believe the sentencing guidelines take into account the very unique situation that we have in this case with a young man who will be in prison forever. I'm asking the court to keep that in mind, and please keep in mind the other arguments throughout the memo.
I think you know that I read everything you send me.
I do, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do you want to respond now, or do you want to get the counter from this lady first?
I prefer just to be able to respond once, Your Honor.
Are you okay with that?
That's fine, Your Honor.
Would you like to address the court, or would you like the client to address the court first?
Would you like to address the court, James?
I would.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Crumbley will address the court. For the record, he does have something typed out that I typed out for him, so it's bigger and easier for him to read, Your Honor. You can't read. No, she said she cannot tell them to go.
Let's end.
He would, Your Honor, there was some confusion about whether or not he could get his second handcuff off. I was just clarifying. The court said she cannot tell the sheriff's
I
office.
does he have to keep that handcuff?
Yes. I was just clarifying, Your Honor. Thank you.
Before I address this court directly, I want to do something that I have never been able to do throughout this time until now. I want to say I can't imagine the pain and agony that for the families that have lost their children and what they're experiencing and what they're going through. As a parent, our biggest fear is losing our child or our children. And to lose a child is unimaginable. My heart is really broken for everybody involved. I understand my words are not going to bring any comfort. I understand that they're not going to relieve any pain. And quite frankly, they probably just don't believe me. However, I really want the families of Madison Baldwin, Hannah St. Juliana, Tate Meyer, Mir, and Justin Schilling to know how truly sorry I am and how devastated I was when I heard what happened to them. I have cried for you and the loss of your children more times than I can count. I know your pain and loss will never go away. Part of you will be missing forever. But please know that I am truly very sorry. I am sorry for your loss as a result of what my son did. I cannot express how much I wish that I had known what was going on with him or what was going to happen. Because I absolutely would have done a lot of things differently. Again, my heart pours out to every single one of you. It really does. Judge Matthews, I'm not gonna overdo a lot of things that were already said. But I know the full amount of pressure that you have on you and the responsibility that has been placed on you throughout this case. I have the utmost respect for you, and I'm simply going to ask that you sentence me in a fair and just way. You presided over my trial and heard the evidence that was presented against me. You know that what my son did, I was not aware of, or that he was planning it, or that he obtained access to the firearms in my house. There was absolutely no evidence that suggested that. As my attorney has told you, I've been on lockdown for 23 hours a day. I've not been able to speak to my son since November 30th, and I have not been able to speak with my wife since December 3rd. I know that I have experienced pales in compassion to what those families who've lost their children and countless other victims experience every day because of what my son did. But I want you to know I too grieve for everyone, as I have explained. For everyone that's been affected by what my son pled guilty to doing. And I'll continue to feel this pain for the rest of my life as well. If I could go back and change things, if I could go back and do things differently, and maybe none of us would be here today. So again, I ask Your Honor to impose a just and fair sentence based on the truth about what you heard during my trial. I'm asking the court to sentence me to time served and place me on probation for the maximum time allowed with the GPS tether for as long as the court deems necessary. I also want to address one last thing. And that's to what Tate Mears' dad said. It is time that we all know the truth. We have been prohibited from telling the whole truth. The whole truth has not been told. And I'm with you, Mr. Meir. I too want the truth. Because you have not had it. You have not had the truth at all. The truth has not been presented to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crumbley. Ms. Seaman, are you wanting to speak? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Same.
Thank you, Your Honor. I did submit a sentencing memorandum, Your Honor. I'm not going to belabor the points that I made in my memorandum, as I do believe that it was thorough. However, I do want to note for the court that, especially in statements that have been made about James, that he lacks remorse, that he doesn't feel bad, that he's trying to put off responsibility on everyone but himself, that he's allegedly made threats toward the elected prosecutor. Your Honor, in some of the same calls that the prosecution has tried to use and has quoted in their own sentencing memorandum and attached as exhibits to their memorandum, as I noted in my sentencing memorandum, Your Honor, James also said in those very same calls that he wished that he had known what his son was capable of. That if he had known, if he had been made aware of these things, if he had known that his son had obtained access to a firearm, then maybe he could have saved the 4 children's lives. That maybe he could have saved a lot more than that. Your Honor, there has never been a time that James Crumbley has not acknowledged what happened in this case. He has felt horrific grief for not only the families, but for the people who have been affected. He's grieved for himself, for his own child. And while that may not be something that is a popular statement to make, he's grieved for the child that he believed he had. Not the child who pled guilty, but the child that he believed he had on the morning of November 30th when he dropped his son off at school. James could not have predicted what his son was going to do that day. He couldn't have predicted because he didn't know that it was going to happen. As James said, Your Honor, you sat through the trial, Judge. You heard the evidence that was presented. You also know that there was no indication given in the evidence presented that James had knowledge of what his son was planning. That James didn't know that his son had been accessing that firearm unsupervised, or that he had access to the firearm unsupervised. Judge, you heard that that firearm was stored legally at the laws at the time, in November of 2021. That there may be differing opinions on whether or not that firearm was stored responsibly, Your Honor, but it was stored legally. It was stored unloaded. It was stored with the ammunition stored separately. Your Honor, James Crumbley did and made the decisions that he thought were right. Based on the information that he had, even on the morning of November 30th at the school, you've heard multiple times that James had no knowledge of what his son was intending to do later that day. That even the school officials, the people who were trained, they talked about the special training that they had during trial. Even those individuals said that they did not believe that James's son was a threat to other people. That they had concerns about his sadness, Your Honor.
They had at a minimum concerns about his danger to himself, right?
Correct, Your Honor. Danger to himself due to his level of sadness, that they wanted him to go talk with somebody, but that it wasn't so emergent that he needed to be removed immediately.
And isn't it the reason they didn't want him to go home?
Your Honor, there's some dispute as to whether or not the testimony from the school is accurate as to what actually occurred in that office. And Judge, I don't want to try and retry the case. I don't think it serves anyone or benefits anyone. But I do want this court to be aware, and Your Honor, you observed James during the trial. You're aware that he had difficulties throughout the trial. He showed emotion. He struggled with some of the things that he heard and saw. And
I don't know how anyone could have.
I agree, Your Honor. I agree. And as I've acknowledged numerous times throughout this case and throughout the trial, it is an incredibly emotional trial. Today is incredibly emotional for everyone involved. I echo what Ms. Smith said. There are no winners here. Everyone has lost in this case.
I think that Ms. Smith said in her sentencing memo that it's possible to stand for everyone here, not just the victims, for the families as well. It is possible to stand for everyone.
And I agree with that, Your Honor. I did ask the court to sentence James to time served. I am going to echo his request for a period of supervision with a GPS tether. I understand that the court, we did object to some scoring. I understand that the court has significantly strong pressure. The emotions run high in this case, Your Honor. I don't envy what you have to do. However, I am asking that you consider my request. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I just have to correct some facts. The allegations that Jennifer and James Crumbley were left in the dark just are not true, and the evidence at trial does not show that. The evidence presented at trial that as late back as March, the 9th, 17th, and the 20th text messages about from their son to Jennifer Crumbley that he was seeing things. In April, his text messages to his friends indicate he asked for help. His mother laughed at him. April 26th, Jennifer told his friend's mother that he was depressed. There were multiple visits to the gun range. There was 2 guns purchased for him. The Crumbleys were aware that he was struggling in school, and in fact, they had a rather, I would say, critical fight the night before, which is all detailed, incidentally, and as well as where the gun actually was in the shooter's statements, his plea, and the multiple statements he made to the psychiatrist, the very same things. They stand here and say, "Oh, if only we could have called them." Well, calling those individuals would have resulted in all of the claims that's inconsistent with what he said, and it's inconsistent with what the psychiatrist testified to in the Miller hearing. So I had no intention of addressing this, but it was brought up, so I feel as if I have to, and I have a duty to do so. They were concerned. The evidence showed that. They were very concerned. They were concerned about the drive, and they were concerned based on the fact that they were called to school. Jennifer Crumbley's own statements acknowledges she was called to the school. They wanted him to get help. She said she had to go back to work, but they said that he could stay. None of that, by the way, is in dispute, and that she left. This insinuation that if only I had known he was sleeping in class and teachers might have been concerned, then none of this would have happened, is at the core of why we saw 6 people standing here and saying there's no remorse or accountability. And I want to be clear, remorse does not sound like I feel really bad. I'm sure they do. I don't dispute they feel bad. I don't dispute they have grief. That's not the kind of remorse and accountability these victims are looking for. What that looks like is we messed up. We should have done this and we didn't, and we are very sorry. And that has not happened, which is what we're talking about here, and what you heard the victims say. I don't want to belabor anymore that we had to in the trial. I have a deep respect for Ms. Lehman, but the facts of this and the elements of this case simply are not that the prosecution had to show that he had actual knowledge and he could predict and he knew exactly what his son was going to do. Those are not the elements of the crime. It's not what the jury was required to find, and it has nothing to do with their actual conviction. Jennifer Crumbley and James Crumbley were not convicted based on a narrative. They were not convicted because somebody thought they were a bad or good parent. Those two trials involved multiple motions and objections over evidence that the court sustained. We did not allow the jury to present the information about Jennifer Crumbley that her lawyer made a strategic decision to, in the middle of the trial, say, open the door, you can bring it all in, was not due to the prosecution's requests or actions. But you can't seek to exclude evidence and then allow somebody to testify to an inconsistent with the evidence. The last thing I want to say is there is case law that the court's aware of about what the court can consider in fashioning a proportional sentence. And we don't give power or authority to victims to decide or render verdicts, with good reason. But we should not, and we cannot, sanitize their pain or the weight of the impact or chalk it up to it's emotionally charged, as if everything that's happened here is because people sitting here are too emotional and they pressure people, because that just simply isn't true. And not only should you consider the weight and the impact of the defendant's actions and inactions, you are required to, pursuant to the case law. It is one of the factors to consider, the severity and the impact of the crime. We've heard a lot about it's not what happened in the school. And while I understand that the negligence, the gross negligence that occurred happened before what happened in that day when he left that bathroom and started firing the 9mm and killing 4 kids. I understand that. But it is absolutely about what James and Jennifer did and what they didn't do, and the gross negligence that caused those acts. This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like. When two parents have the ability and are in the best position and have the most knowledge and need to protect other kids, and they do nothing. This is what it looks like. They do nothing, and then they come here today and they claim they're victims of the school, of the prosecution, of the emotional tensions of public opinion. But there were 2 long and rigorous and detailed trials that included multiple victims and witnesses who testified under oath, with hundreds of exhibits presented to the juries, with the safeguard of this court allowing what they could see and what they couldn't see, and they were defended by 2 attorneys aptly and vigorously. That is what this conviction is about. And when fashioning a sentence, it is absolutely critical that you listen and consider the impact of what that gross negligence caused. So we're asking you to exceed the guidelines, because I believe all of the factors pursuant to the case law, with the necessary consideration of the impact of these crimes, justifies you to do. We're asking you, the people are asking you, Your Honor, to consider the devastating impact of their gross negligence that was foreseeable. Help me. Blood everywhere. The world is dead. All the while, a 9mm had just been purchased for him, and 50 rounds of ammunition. Both things can be true, Your Honor. You can fashion a proportionate sentence, but not ignore the unimaginable loss and a grief that these parents are enduring. Because they will never get back another moment with Tate, or Hannah, or Justin, or Madison. And this is what it looks like. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I would like to say briefly to the families, considering your immeasurable grief, it's completely understandable to hate everything associated with these proceedings. I spent both trials looking out at all the family members, and I wondered to myself, I was looking straight on at Mr. St. Juliana, whether or not he'll ever smile again. And that's very difficult. I'm very aware of my job in the situation, very aware of my job, to not be swayed by public opinion, by media, by any of those different things. I can't and will not pretend to understand the pain the families are experiencing, but I did sit through these trials with you. I saw what you saw, I heard what you heard, so I can and will offer my deepest and most sincere condolences for your unfathomable losses. It's as I just said, it's not my role, it's not the role of the court system to make an example of the defendants. However, it is a goal of sentencing to act as a deterrent. These charges are not jury edicts about gun ownership or keeping a gun in a private home. All of the jurors in both trials agreed that they understood that. Parenting is a complex job. Parenting practices around the world share the goals of ensuring health and safety, preparation for life as a productive adult, and transmission of cultural values. Parents are not expected to be psychic. But these convictions are not about poor parenting. These convictions confirm repeated acts or lack of acts that could have halted an oncoming runaway train. About repeatedly ignoring things that would make a reasonable person feel the hair on the back of their neck stand up. Opportunity knocked over and over again, louder and louder, and was ignored. No one answered, and these two people should have and sure didn't. Mr. Crumbley, it's clear to this court that because of you, there was unfettered access to a gun or guns, as well as ammunition in your home. You characterized yourself as a martyr and threatened the well-being of the prosecutor. Mrs. Crumbley, you glorified the use and possession of these weapons. Your attitude toward your son and his behaviors was dispassionate and apathetic. Your response to school staff after a 12-minute meeting was, "Are we done here?" During your trial, you announced that you wouldn't do anything different. I understand that that might have been misinterpreted, but it did cut the victims deep. Because of both of your actions and inaction, among many, many other things, the world is missing out on a top college university will miss out on Tate's star quality football skills. I met Raina, who's wise beyond her years, and she's told us that among many, many other things, the community will be denied Hannah's kindness, creativity, and sense of humor. Among many, many other things the world will miss is Madison's kind and loving soul and the light that reflected her beauty both inside and out. Although a hero in death because of his organ donations that helped so many, we will never know where Justin, an excellent student with vast skills and interests, described as a mentor and a leader, would have left his giant imprint. The impact statements given here and the written statements provided to the court describe the cataclysmic impact the deaths of these children have had on their children. With regard to each defendant, this court has spent night and day thinking about this case, as you can imagine. I've prayed about this case, I've thought about this case, and I've considered the possibility for rehabilitation, the need to protect society, the penalty appropriate to the conduct and goal of deterring others from similar conduct. I have reviewed the pre-sentence investigation reports. I am, of course, sadly familiar with the facts and circumstances of these cases, as well as those surrounding each defendant. The advisory sentencing guidelines in this matter do not capture the catastrophic impact of the acts or inaction in these matters. The guidelines do not take into account the complete lack of insight both defendants have for their behavior to this very day. The guidelines do not account for the severity of the circumstances in this matter. The guidelines ignore the survivors, including shooting victims Phoebe Arthur, Elijah Mueller, Riley Franz, Kylie Osage, John Asciutto, Molly Darnell, and Aiden Watson. They were deeply wounded, both physically and emotionally. In addition to the 7 wounded, each of the defendants' gross negligence has caused unimaginable suffering to hundreds of others as a result of what happened that day. Each act or inaction created a ripple effect. Therefore, an out-of-guidelines sentence is appropriate and proportional. The court uses the useful tool of the legislative guidelines, which embody the principles of proportionality, while also taking into account the nature of the offense and the background of each defendant. I believe that the following sentences would be in the best interest of justice and are reasonable and proportionate to the seriousness of the matter and the circumstances surrounding each defendant. With regard to Jennifer Crumbley, it is the sentence of this court, Ms. Crumbley, that you serve 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. You will have credit for 858 days. State costs are $272. There's a crime victims' rights fee of $130. You and your agents may not have any contact with the families of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. I will issue another ruling with regard to contact with your son, the shooter. Excuse me. As to defendant James Crumbley, it is the sentence of this court that you serve 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections, that you receive credit for 858 days, that you pay state costs in the matter of $272, that there is a crime victims' rights fee of $130, that you or your agents have no contact with the families of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. Ms. Wheeler, have I left anything out with regard to sentencing? No restitution has been requested by any of the families at this time, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. I would like to advise both defendants that you are entitled to appellate review of your conviction and sentence, including that the sentence exceeds the guideline range. This is done by filing a claim of appeal by right, or when you are not entitled to file a claim of appeal by right, an application for leave to appeal. If you cannot afford to hire an attorney to represent you on appeal, and you request an attorney may be appointed for you. You may request an attorney by completing the request for appointment of attorney section of the form that will be provided for you, and by returning the form to this court or to the Michigan Assigned Counsel System at the address on the form. If you wish to preserve your automatic right to appeal, the form must be received within 42 days after sentencing. If you do not submit the form within 42 days from today, you may still file an application for leave to appeal if the form is received within 6 months after sentencing. Do each of the defendants acknowledge receipt of their appellate rights?
James acknowledges receipt, Your Honor. He's completing the form as we speak.
Your Honor, my plan is as well. Would the court like the forms here, or would you prefer us to?
It doesn't matter either way.
Okay.
Either way.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that everyone remain seated while the defendants are taken out of the courtroom. I think they're going to finish their appellate rights.
They are going to, Mr. Crumbley is going to finish his form,
All
Your
right,
Honor.
we'll wait for that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, I guess that is
So that's that.
yeah. What are your thoughts, Bob?
It was appropriate, you know. I felt like that's about where I thought it would fall, and I think I may have said those exact ranges, but yeah, I mean, I saw we got a defense attorney, Spartan William, in there in the chats, and I guess he's up in Oxford, and I hear what he's saying, but I disagree with him on the fact that I think that this was foreseeable for all the reasons that we stated when we were watching, the trials themselves. To me, it'll always be the test that was handed to them in that school that day, and it should have been avoided, could have been avoided, and it wasn't. And as far as people with the allocutions, and that's where the defense has the right to be able to make statements after and prior to the sentencing, after the victim impact statements. In a case where my clients have been found guilty and it's clear in terms of their culpability, that's where you'll get the mercy of the court, and you hope that your client will accept some responsibility for their actions, in the hopes that maybe that'll have some impact on the judge. In this case, they're definitely going to be appealing the issues. It's a hot button case because of the impact it could have moving forward, and will have moving forward on prosecutors' offices, law enforcement, in terms of charging parents. So you can fully anticipate that this will be going up to the appellate court there, probably end up in the Supreme Court of Michigan, and very likely or potentially could end up in the Supreme Court of the United States, because it's that kind of case, because it changed things. It changed the fabric of our society in a scary way, for parents, especially parents that are not as active as they should be in their kids' lives. So, I continue to support the verdict. I think it was the absolute right verdict. I'm a parent of 4. As I've said, I never, under any circumstances, would have left my child in that school that day, ever, period. And because they did, because like I said, to me, it's less impactful on me in terms of what happened preceding it, just because of the realities of life and the realities of dealing with teenagers, and you can't really always know what's going on in their minds. I think anybody that has teenagers knows that that's true. They're young adults. They're learning how to become adults, and they're private. A lot of kids, and they're not going to share everything with their parents. But when you get into school that day and you're handed that letter, that math test, which is unequivocal, like in the one thing that Karen never says, which was to me the most telling thing on that page, is that she never, like even during the trial, she would never say the thoughts won't stop. To me, that was everything. That tells you that this is what he's thinking about doing, and that he can't stop thinking about those, the violence. And to me, it's absolutely the right verdict.
Do you know, Bob, a lot of people have this question. So she says 10 to 15. Could she just been like 15? Like, why is there a range there? Does that mean with parole? Like, what's 10 to 15? What does that mean exactly, 10 to 15?
Yeah, I'm assuming, and I don't practice up in Michigan, that range means that he'll be eligible for parole, or whatever they call it up there, at year 10. And he can start applying for parole at that point.
So potentially she could have said 5. Like, could she have? Did she give the maximum sentence? Could she have said 15, no parole? Like, or like, was that a lighter sentence than could she have given a stiffer sentence?
Yeah, 15 was the max she could have gone.
So she could have said 15, no parole, 15. She could have said that.
I think so. Don't quote me on it, just because I'm not 100% on the law up there. Maybe Spartan William knows. He says he practices up there in terms of I don't know if she could deny the possibility of parole. So I don't know. I don't feel comfortable answering
Okay,
that.
no problem. Yeah, that's okay.
But yeah, it's not my state. So yeah, man. What's your gut on it? What do you feel?
What as far as the sentence goes, or
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I thought they should have got the max, and I like I said, as I'm watching her, particularly her fucking Jennifer's statement, I'm like, she's not remorseful. Like, how could she not take that opportunity to be like, more like, James, I am so sorry. This should have never happened. I wish I could go back, but like her statement was like insane, and I don't know, Bob. Like and you said, I don't think. Have you ever seen? James's attorney kind of said, I'm not going to re-argue this here, and that doesn't help anyone. But not Shannon. She's like arguing. I found that bizarre. Have you ever done that where what was the point of? Is that for the? Do you think that was because she was trying it for the appeal? But
yeah, it's definitely for the appeal. I mean, she's trying to get.
But isn't there a better time? Can't you do that at a different time? Isn't that like that's the moment where she's like arguing these things about the like? It was bizarre to me, but
it's not normal in the sense that I think that she was trying to make points that she felt like that maybe she didn't get out during the trial, and she's trying to cram them in there for the purposes of the appeal. Even though, frankly, I happen to remember her bringing up most of all of what she said. So I didn't really feel that anything that she was saying was novel in the sense that it wasn't brought up at the trial. So I think she's just one of those lawyers that is going to try to drive home points for the appellate court so that she's preserving the issue. And, I mean, she like I said, these things are both cases are going to get appealed. So
what do you think about that? They get out the truth. So they're implying like that there's some sort of cover up with the school and law enforcement. Like what was that?
Yeah, that's the sense I get. I mean, it was pretty telling when Mr. Mews was on the stand and he was kind of giving us some of the, and we heard it from Hannah's sister, who was, I'm still shook. Like the brilliance of that young lady was stunning to me. I mean, what she is, as the judge aptly said, she's wise beyond her years. I mean, that was no child up there. That was a young woman with a brilliant mind who was able to articulate everything in a way that just struck me to my core. I mean, she was so impressive. I mean, there's no way I'm not clipping that and putting her whole victim impact statement on Twitter and TikTok, because as far as I'm concerned, it reminded me of that young woman who read that poem at I think it was at Barack Obama's second inauguration, who became like, just went viral because it was like some of the most powerful things that I'd ever heard from a young person. And man, like that young lady hit me like that, man. It was like every single one of them was powerful in different ways, like I said before, but like hers in particular was just, man, it was incredibly powerful.
It reminded me, Bob, and I don't know if you watched this trial. I was streaming a trial, Zachariah Anderson, and it was his daughter testified. I think she was 16 or 17, and it just reminded, like, the point where she's like, "Don't roll your eyes at me." And I tweeted this out. I'm like, do not fuck with teenage girls because they will come for you. And it just reminded, like, that moment, like she was not gonna have to take anyone's shit. And it's like, and I'll reiterate, do not fuck with teenage girls, man. Do not fuck. Like, she was not having it, man.
100%. And she's brilliant enough to put it all into words. You know what I mean? There was
right.
That thing was like, and her eye contact with both, like everything, every nuance from her being up there was incredible. She was making like when she was looking up at James and Jennifer Crumbley. She was speaking to them. It was next level, man. It blew my mind. It really did. All right, here's what I think we should do, dude, right now.
Okay.
I think we need to pivot
immediately
to Nikolai Mews on the stand. and we'll rewind it. Everybody in this chat, I think, will want to watch it. Jay, you know, that's the Apple River stabbing case.
Yeah.
You know anything about it? You'll like it.
Yeah, I've seen the video, and I mean, I'm not like fully. He's on right now.
He is testifying. He's currently, so they must be in the defense's case in chief. Like, I'm fascinated by that case. I think we'll have a great chat. I think that everybody will stick with us, and I think we'll have some great conversation with it. What we'll do is, if you want to pivot to it, we'll rewind to the beginning of his testimony. I'll give like a quick primer for anybody that might not be familiar with the case, and let's just hear what this guy has to say.
All right, let me. Well, you give your thing, and I'll find it right now.
All right, perfect. Okay, let's see here. All right, so if you guys aren't familiar with this guy Nikolai Mews trial, it's going on right now. The state's case in chief is done, and kind of the factual background is back in 2022, there was a stabbing or multiple stabbings on the Apple River on July 31st, and the defendant in the case is a guy named Nikolai Mews, and he is facing the charges of first-degree intentional homicide for the death of 17-year-old Isaac Schumann and multiple counts of attempted first-degree intentional homicide for his role in the stabbings on, and I misspoke, it's July 30th of 2022, not July 31st. So I had posted on my Twitter last week the video that had not been seen, that one of the teens that was in the group that Nikolai Mews was interacting with, and it was about 3 minutes and some change, and it catches the stabbings. They're hard to see. It's a very blurry video, but ultimately one of the teens was killed as a result of the stabbing. I believe that 3 others were injured and stabbed, including one of them was disemboweled and survived.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And so ultimately the defendant is claiming self-defense. All right. And what you see, and it's been a raging debate on Twitter. Like, as soon as the second I became aware of that case, I was like, oh man, I wish I had been streaming it, but I knew I was going to be leaving. I didn't want to start and have to dump it off. It's a fascinating case, and it's got those elements of the case that we first streamed together on, in terms of it being self-defense, and people are on both sides of it. You know, he's an older guy. He's 54 years old. He was married. He was and I'm talking about Nikolai Mews. He was at the river that day. Everybody was tubing. You know, him, Mews and his wife and a couple of friends were tubing. He claims that one of his friends had dropped his phone into the river, so he had gone back to look for it. He had a knife in his pocket, which, if anybody does any tubing, is not unusual, because typically when you go out and you create a float, you know, you'll tie, 5, 6, whatever, 4, 5, 6 tubes together, and you guys all float down the river together. And so typically people will have something to cut the twine or the rope with when you are done tubing. So he has that in his pocket. And ultimately, when he goes back, the kids start giving him a bunch of shit. He's an old guy. These are all teenagers. The teenagers were all pretty inebriated. They start, they're asking, what are you doing, man? You looking for little girls? And, and like the kid who's filming the video is screaming that he's a raper, a child raper. Other adults on the group of women on the other side start to get involved, and then it just devolves into chaos. He gets punched. The story is that he struck one of the women and that he was hit as a result of that. So that's kind of a pretty decent primer. That'll kind of get us to the point where now he's going to testify. And as I've said, when you've got a self-defense claim, you almost have to put your defendant on, because in order to show that it's self-defense, you've got to really go up there and tell your side of the story. Otherwise, I don't know how you're ever going to be able to prove up, even though there's no burden on the defense to prove anything. But with the self-defense defense, there is a burden in terms of proving that it was done in self-defense. So if anybody has any other questions, I think that'll kind of get you to where we're at. So he's about to testify in his own defense. Let's see what he has to say.
Direct exam, and then we can take up the outstanding matter of cross-examination over the lunch hour. All right. Anything else? No.
Does it only come through one of your headphones?
Yeah. Let me see if it may be a different. Is it on more than one? I assume it's on more than one.
Yeah, I saw Court TV has it on, but they have so many commercials.
What's his name? There it is.
So it's Nicolae, and then MIU.
Thing in your hand, is that right?
Yeah. Testify and present evidence on his own behalf. Mr. Trofasi, Mr. Nelson, how do you intend to proceed from here? That
Calls Nick Mews.
Mr. Mew, please stand. Raise your right hand. The clerk will administer the oath.
Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Please have a seat in the witness chair. Mr. Nelson.
You're the Nick Mew we've been talking about for the past 7 days?
Yes, sir.
Nick, I want to right away talk to you about exhibit.
Mandy, real quick, if you're in the chat, if you could quickly send me the banner like I have on the bottom, that's just me. But if you have the one of me and Bob, I don't have it on this program. If you could send it to me when you get a chance so I can update it.
Number 104, if I could have the screen. You were on the Apple River on July 30th?
Yes.
I want to ask you about this exhibit, which says it's from frame 2592 at 149 into the video. Have you seen this before?
Yes.
Do you remember that time in your life when you were on the river in that position as shown in that photograph?
Yes.
Sometime after that, did something happen to you?
Yes.
Were you punched?
Not
attacked?
before that.
Sometime after this, were you
After
punched?
that, yes.
Okay, I want to talk about the time between this and the time that you get punched, okay?
Okay.
Exhibit number 104 there is on the, with it. Where are you on that?
I'm standing in front of two ladies.
In which, if you were going to just describe the symbol on Exhibit 104 symbolizing you, which one is that?
The one with the M.
Okay.
you
What
want
color?
Do you want the
Blue.
annotator?
At that point in time, you said there's two people in front of you. Who are those two people in front of you?
A blonde lady to my left and a red hair lady to my right.
Were there other, does this accurately reflect how you remember roughly people in general around you?
Yes.
The blonde lady in front and the other woman, you understand now that through the trial that the blonde woman is named Madison Cohen?
Yes.
Can we use her name when possible?
Yes.
And the, you said red-haired woman, her name's Riley Madison. Can we use her name when possible?
Yes.
Possible? So when Riley and Madison are standing in front of you at that point, just before you get punched, right? What are they doing?
They're yelling at me. At one point, they were pointing downriver and saying, go, get away.
What are they doing with their hands?
They're touching me.
When you say touching you, is that something gentle?
No, they're pushing. Madison, she pushed against my left shoulder. She pushed against my chest. She was pointing her finger right at my face. She was yelling at me, very close to my face. Riley had one of her arms, I believe it was left hand, on my right arm, squeezing and pushing me back.
And you when you just gave that description, you put your hands distance apart. Can you show us that again? How far away were they?
About
See how good our mods are? Like Mandy already got me that. We got it on the banner.
Oh, nice.
foot.
Okay.
Less than a foot.
You've heard it described through trial as in your personal space. Would you agree with that?
Yes, right in my face, I would describe.
When that was happening, what did it sound like to you?
The volume was very, very high.
Let me ask you about how your body was responding in that moment when people are pushing you, poking at you, the volume is high. How's your heart? Could you tell us about what your heart rate was?
Oh, yeah. My heart rate was getting really high. My breathing was getting very high. I was.
How about your vision? Did you
yeah.
have normal vision in that moment?
No. At that moment, because of the situation, I was getting tunnel vision.
And can you describe what you mean by you say in tunnel vision?
I couldn't see peripheral vision, but I could see center in right before my eyes.
How about hearing? Could you hear the noises?
I could hear the volume very high, but I couldn't understand what they were saying. The noise became garbled. I mean, the sound became garbled.
Did you feel threatened at that point?
Yes.
Did you have your knife in your right hand?
Yes.
So, and just so you guys know, there were, at this point in time, this guy, who I said is 54 years old, is surrounded by, I think, between 11 and 12 people. So like you got the drunk teenagers who are all screaming at him, and you've got these women who, you know, the kids had said, oh, this guy's looking for little girls. He's a child raper, you know, who are screaming at this guy. And this guy, again, had walked down to try to find, he had his snorkel set with him when he came first. And when you see the video, it's strange because he kind of looks like he approaches very quickly towards the tubes. Like I don't know, and I'm going to be curious to say if he thought when he was coming over that they had found the phone, because the one kid, Juwan, is filming all of it. So I don't know if he mistook that for being the phone and they found it and he was coming to grab it. Because then he drops his snorkel, and then you see him in the video, like looking down, trying to find his snorkel. And so in the kids flow past and he goes by. It's interesting. It's like I saw Missy Mayhem. There's a lot more to it than that. That he just had a knife and he had to start stabbing people because, you know, they touched him. It's a lot more than that. Just wait for it. Let's hear and see what this guy's position is. I'm very, very anxious to hear this.
What did you do with your left hand? Tell us what you did with your left hand.
Yeah, with my left hand, I pushed her away from my face.
Can you show us what you did with your left hand? Why'd you do that?
She was very close to my face. She was in my personal space. She had been there for a while, and I felt threatened.
Did you intend to harm her in some way?
No.
Did you try to harm her in some way?
Absolutely not.
Do you know where, if at all, you had contact with her body when you raised your left hand in that manner?
No.
Do you think you had contact with her?
No.
Okay. I want to take us out of that space now for a second, okay, Nick?
Okay.
If I could have the screen again. You were here in court when we talked about, when we watched the video of you speaking with Brandy Hart, is that right?
Yes.
And I think you told her about your health condition. Can you just tell the jury now, what was your health like on July 30th of 2022?
It was very poor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Had you, I think you mentioned to her again, had quadruple bypass surgery before?
Yes, sir.
And when did you have that?
2020, about the same month, so about August.
Showing you here what's been marked as exhibit number 108. Can you tell us what those are pictures of, starting just on the left?
Yep, on the left it's me right after the surgery, holding a red heart pillow against my surgery.
what was the purpose that you knew of for that red heart pillow?
That was to protect my surgery from hits, bumps.
Was that something that the hospital provided? It looks like there's like almost a picture of heart and lungs on there.
It is. The hospital provided that.
And then the picture in the middle, what is that?
My first walk, my new life.
Did it take you some time to recover and be as active and mobile as you were before?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think you ever reached the same level of mobility and fitness that you were prior to the quadruple bypass?
Never.
What's the picture of you on the right there? You can tell us.
My baby.
Okay. Is that a dog?
Yeah.
Is that dog important to you?
My angel.
Okay. And that's the cushions helping you to enjoy time with her, but still keeping your chest safe?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You've had other surgeries in the past, is that right?
Yes.
Did you have a hernia surgery?
2 hernia surgeries.
Have you had back surgery?
Yes.
And again, in general, would you consider your fitness on, if you were going to put it on a scale for July 30th, what would you consider your overall health and fitness on July 30th of 2022?
With my weight and very poor.
I want to ask you now about moving on to the Apple River in July 30th, okay?
Okay.
On that, this was a planned trip, is that right?
Yes.
Did you get a call from your friend Ernesto sometime before that trip?
Yes, sir.
What was that call about?
He wanted to remind me to bring my knife to cut string when we tie the tubes together.
Okay, when you say, do you have a pocket knife?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us about that pocket knife?
I owned it for about 10 years. I have it a lot on me. I use it as basically a dual tool. I call it my Swiss Army knife, basically because I use it as a screwdriver. I cut insulation when I do electrical work. I use it pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
I'm an engineer. My tool.
Is it something that you've carried on your person, I don't want to say all the time, but somewhat routinely?
Yeah, when I knew I was going to work on something or need it for something, yes.
Okay. Now I want to skip ahead again now to the river, okay? At some point, did Ariel lose his phone?
Yes, he did.
Did you go to look for that phone?
I volunteered to go look for it.
When you went to go look for that phone, what were you wearing?
Before that?
Nope, right when you left your group to go look for that phone, what were you wearing?
So I took my goggles, my snorkel, and my swimming trunks.
Did you have anything on your feet?
Yes, I had, on my feet, I had a pair of really, really torn up sandals.
Can I approach, Judge?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 113. Is this a packet of 9 photos of your sandals?
Yes.
You've seen those?
Yes.
Does that accurately show the condition of the sandals that you had?
Yes.
Can you just move to the admission of Exhibit 113?
Any objection?
I don't think I've seen them, Judge, if I could take a look at it.
Yes. Oh, never mind, this guy hasn't seen them. All right, 113 is received.
These weren't taken by you, were they?
Pictures? No.
These were taken by the Sheriff's Department, correct?
Yes.
Permission to publish, Judge?
Yes.
Can I, just because we're going to go through the PowerPoint, can I?
Yeah,
pass
just
them?
pass them to the jury.
Can you use your words? I know we have a picture that better does it, but just briefly, describe the condition of those sandals.
Horrible.
Okay.
They were just coming apart. I couldn't walk on them unless I tried to mend them.
Okay.
As you can see, I used string, leftover string to mend them.
When you left wearing those sandals and your shorts, did you have your pocket knife with you?
Yes.
Where was it?
In my right pocket, clipped to my...
Did you have that there pretty much all day?
Yes.
You were here when we watched the video of your interview with Brandy Hart, is that right?
Yes.
When you spoke with Brandy Hart, were you truthful to her about the knife?
No. I lied about the knife.
Was that your knife?
Yes, it is. It was.
Did you bring it with you when you went to go look for the phone?
Yes, I did.
When you went to go look for the phone, did you have any intent to harm anybody?
No.
Why'd you go leave your group?
To go look for the phone.
Okay. At some point, did you have some contact with a group of teenagers?
Yes.
And you were here in court when we saw the 9-second video, is that right?
Yes.
I want to show you just a couple of slides from that, if I could. Do you see those slides up there?
Yes.
Are those from that video?
Yes.
What are you doing in those 3 slides in general?
I was scanning the water looking for the phone.
And are you, in that position, are you walking upriver or downriver?
Upriver, away from that group of boys.
Did you hear them say some things to you?
Yes.
Prior to your walking upriver and them, did you hear those words that I have written on that slide?
Yes.
Prior to your hearing those words when you were walking upriver, had you had verbal contact with that group?
So they asked me what I was looking for, and I told them I'm looking for a phone, a lost phone.
Did you ever tell them that you were looking for little girls?
No.
Were you looking for little girls?
Absolutely not. It's pathetic.
When you, at the end of this, when you watch the video, at the end of the video, where I'm not going to play it, but do you remember what you did right there at the end?
At the end, I was walking away.
Did you eventually turn around and face in the direction of the group that was yelling at you and calling you a raper?
Yes.
When you...
Yes.
Guess what? We don't have to wait for that. Oh, they got the sound machine too. Jeez.
Point did you ever?
I'll sustain the objection. The question was leading. Please continue.
What did you do at the end of the video?
I was walking away.
At some point, did you ever become in a position where you were looking at that group of teenagers that had yelled at you?
Yes.
What did you see when you were looking at that group of teenagers after the end of this video?
I saw one of them holding a phone in a bag, and I believed it was what I was looking for, so I turned around and I started approaching them.
Why did you approach them?
I wanted to get a closer look at the phone to see if it was the one that that belonged to Ariel.
Did you eventually get near them?
Yes, I started walking, then I rushed the pace, stumbled, and fell on my knees, held on to their tube, at which point I lost my goggle and snorkel kit in the water.
You saw in the video, or excuse me, you saw during your interview with Brandy Hart that you said things different than what you just said now about what happened to your snorkel and goggles.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Is your memory sometimes different than what you see in the video?
Yes.
Was your memory, in your memory, what happened to your goggles?
In my memory, the goggles got
knocked away?
Knocked away, yeah.
Objection leading.
So,
One second. When there's an objection, just wait on your answer. It is leading, sustained. Next question, please.
His answer was stricken.
It's a leading question. Let's move on.
Is your memory perfect?
Never.
Now that you've watched the video, do you realize that you were wrong about that?
Yes.
What happened to your goggles?
My goggles fell in the water.
When they fell in the water, what did you do?
I started looking for them, searching right where they fell.
Oops, it's on already. Showing you here some slides, 220, 225, and 279. Can you tell us what you're doing?
I'm searching for the goggle kit.
And where are you in relation to the 6 teenagers' tubes? Are you on the side? Are you upriver? Are you downriver? Are you in some other position?
I'm upriver. So, yeah.
I'm going to then show you another group of slides, 575, 600, and 625. What does that show you doing?
So what I did from that point, I went around the inner tubes to the other side, and I continued looking for the goggle and snorkel set.
Why did you walk around from the one side to get to the other side of the tubes?
Well, I thought that the water current would bring him over to the other side, and I was walking away from the boys at the same time.
Okay. During that time that you walked in that direction, did you have any physical contact with them?
No.
Were you confronting them?
No. Didn't say a word.
This next set of slides, what does this show you doing here?
I'm walking away from the group. Still.
Go ahead.
Still looking for my goggles at that time.
When you were doing that, did you ever hear the kids say anything?
They gave me a warning.
What'd they say?
You got 10 seconds.
In response to that, what did you do?
I ignored them, and I actually continued doing what I was doing.
Okay. I can show you the next set of slides here. Were you in a position to see here 963, 1140, and 1155, what the teenagers were doing behind you?
They were getting closer and closer to me. They were walking towards me.
Were you in a position to see that? Was that behind you, or had you turned around?
Well, I could hear their voices. I could hear that they were getting closer. At some point, I may have turned my head and witnessed that. They're coming towards me.
Showing you 1170, 1213, and 1284. What's happening here?
I'm at an angle to them, but I could say I have my back at them, still scanning the water, and they were right behind me. They got that close. Within seconds, they were right behind me.
At some point, did you see other people from another group?
Yes.
What did you see?
I saw what seemed to me at the time adults coming over from the other side of the river.
And when you saw adults coming over from the other side of the river, what did you do?
I walked towards them. I walked towards this. The first one was was Madison.
When you walked towards Madison, where were the 6 teenage boys that had been yelling at you?
They're following me.
Okay. Were you in their path as you walked across the river towards Madison?
No.
Did they have as far as you know, did they have a clear path down the river if they wanted?
More than plenty.
Can I? Showing you this next group of photos. What's going on here?
So in this frame here, the first adult that came to me was Madison. She already had her finger pointing downriver and yelling at me and used some awkward words, ordering me to go down.
We see it looks like you're doing something with your right hand. Do you remember what are you doing with your right hand?
Yep, I was trying to explain to her what I'm looking for.
When you tried to explain to her what you were looking for, did you get the impression she was listening to you?
No, her voice was too loud to.
As to what Madison had as an impression.
Okay.
Hold on, wait a second. Sustained. Speculation.
I'm asking about his impression, so did you get the impression that Madison Cohen was going to listen to your words?
No,
Why not?
because she was too loud. She never stopped to give me a chance to talk, and she kept pointing and ordering me to go downriver.
We've all heard the tape, but was she using polite language?
Polite? No.
Did you hear anyone saying anything behind you when you walked over to Madison Cohen?
Yes, they're all calling me names.
Okay. Showing you the next set of slides here, 1776, 1840, and 1824. What are you doing here in this set of slides?
I'm turning my back towards Madison and the rest of the people.
Why did you turn your back to Madison and the rest of the people?
It felt to me like I couldn't have a conversation with her at that point. She was not listening. And I didn't want to interact any further.
Had you at that point found your snorkel or goggles?
No,
Had you at that point found the phone?
no.
Did you hear anybody saying anything while you stood there with their back to them?
Oh, yeah.
What did you hear?
They were still yelling, he's looking for little girls.
Were you looking for little girls?
Absolutely not.
When you heard them, did you consider that to be a lie?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
Sustained.
I asked, did you consider that to be a lie? I don't.
Yes,
think
of
that's-
Hold on, please.
Don't think that's legal.
I sustain the objection. Please move on.
When you heard that, did you consider it to be truthful or did you consider it to be untrue?
Untrue.
And when you heard someone say an untruth about you, did that change how you were feeling?
I felt frustrated. I felt annoyed. They kept saying it over and over, so it annoyed me and frustrated me.
And when you heard them say this untruth about you, did it appear to you as if the other group that had come over agreed with what these the teenagers were yelling about you?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Did you think anybody in the other group was going to help you or listen to you when you were being called these names and accused of being a pedophile?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
How did you feel?
Well, I felt overwhelmed at that point. I felt still annoyed, frustrated. I felt like she wasn't listening. She was the adult I thought I was going to reason with or get help from. She obviously didn't even attempt to reprimand the children from yelling.
Showing you another slide here, some 1838, 1846, and 1865. Is that you?
Yes.
What are you doing?
Judge, can we protest?
Yes.
Showing you photos 1838, 1846, 1865. What are you doing in those? Do you remember what you were doing?
Yeah, I had my back towards the group of people.
In the two photos there, which direction are you looking?
I'm looking downriver.
Okay. Are you looking at, there's two different groups, if I recall, from Exhibit 104. Is that right?
Yes.
One came from one side of the river and the other one's on the other side of the river.
Correct.
Where are you, in the photo on the upper left, are you looking at one particular group as opposed to another group?
Yes, I'm looking at the boys group
And why are you looking at the boys group?
because they were yelling at me.
And what were they yelling at you?
They were yelling things that were not true and pointing at me.
When this, I want to, after that happened, showing you the next group of slides, 1875, 1883, and 1889, do you remember what Madison did, if anything, to you?
Yeah.
What did she do?
She grabbed my right arm and she pulled me towards her and I lost my balance. So I moved towards her.
Did you consider that in that circumstance to be a gentle or a gracious touch?
No, that was not a gracious touch. No, not at all.
Had she been using any gentle or gracious words with you?
Not that, no, not that I remember.
In those photos, can we see the footwear that you were wearing on that day?
Yep, those sandals that we saw earlier.
Did you have confidence in your footing in that area with those sandals?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
How did you feel about your footing in that area?
Very unstable.
Want to show you the next set of slides here. Do you remember what you say to Madison after she pulled on your right arm?
Yeah, I told her not to touch me
And why did you tell her that?
because she pulled on me without my invitation.
Did you say that in any particular tone?
No, not in a mean tone, but I made it sound so she could hear me. Don't touch me.
Okay. Why didn't you want her to touch you?
I didn't give her permission to do so.
Sure, but why did you not want to give her permission to do so?
Because she was one-track mind. She just wanted to get me away from that, point me down river and tell me to go there.
What's your comfort level at this point?
On a scale from 1 to 10, comfort level is very low.
Okay.
If you could give us a scale, give us a number, sir.
If you had that same thing, a scale of like a fear scale, a 1 to 10 fear scale, right? And so
Yeah.
with 10 being the most fearful you've ever been in your life, and 0, let's call 0 to 10 being the most safe you've ever felt. Where are you at here on a fear scale?
In that particular,
Yeah.
about 1.
Okay.
There we go. All right.
So you're more uncomfortable, but not necessarily afraid. Is that what I understand?
Correct.
Where was your group in relation to you then?
Was upriver.
And did you do anything in order, in relation to your group?
Yep.
What did you do?
I turned to them and I called them. I was trying to call them to come over and help me.
Are these slides, does this 2127, 2140, 2131, what does that show you doing?
I was waving at them and calling them to come over.
When you say you were calling them, did you do something physical or did you do something verbal or did you do both?
Physical.
Did you make any verbal comments at that point?
No.
Why not?
It was very loud. All around me was very loud. I don't think that anybody could have heard me 100 and some feet away.
With everybody else yelling, did you think your yelling was going to de-escalate or escalate the situation?
When everybody's raising their voice, I don't think having another raised voice would help the situation.
After you raised your hand to call for your friends, did you see Madison Cohn doing anything?
Oh yeah, she was looking towards her group, and then she waved to them to come over to her.
Is that what we're seeing here in 2261, 2262, and 2263? What do you see?
Yep, she's calling her group over.
Did you remember when she called her group over, did her group respond?
Yes.
Did they join that?
Yes.
Showing you now these slides, is that what you saw?
Yes.
I think we asked you questions before about Exhibit 104 with you with the blue dot and the other red dots. When you were, were you standing there? Were other people around you?
Yes.
When you were standing there in that moment with the other people around you after you've called your friends once, was that other group, did they appear to be afraid to you?
Afraid from me?
Afraid. Did they appear? When you look at them, do they look like they're in fear?
No, absolutely
What does it look
not.
like to you?
They're all laughing and enjoying themselves.
At whose expense?
At my expense.
And
Speculation as to what these other.
Sustained. Speculation as to what other people think. Next question.
how did you feel in that moment when they were around you saying those things? Did you think they wanted you to join in their laughter?
No,
Did you want to join in their laughter?
no, absolutely not. It was
Where, if this fear scale is going, is it staying at 1 or is it moving in a particular direction?
It's creeping up.
Showing you another set of slides here, 2328, 2311, 2382. Do you remember, what do you remember about that?
I remember the young boys are yelling, pointing at me, saying things that are not true.
Were you able to see, like in this next slide, this 2429, 2440, 2401, were you able to see as you stood there what everybody was doing? Were you able to scan and see that?
For a brief second, yes.
Okay.
They were very close. They were really close to me. I could see and hear them.
How about your fear scale there? Where is it? Where is it?
About 2 or 3.
Okay. I see in the one on the right there, you have your hand someplace. Can you tell me what you're doing with your right hand?
Yes, I'm reaching for my pocket knife.
Why?
Because at one point my fear was getting really high, and I was getting ready to pull it out.
Okay. Do you remember, other than what you've talked about, Madison Cohen pulling you, which we saw, do you remember anybody else touching, pushing, grabbing you in any way?
The 2 ladies, yeah.
Showing you here what's 2472, 2478, 2481. Do you remember what's happening in those photos?
Yes, yes. This one, the lady on my right side, she grabbed my arm and she was pushing against my arm.
And did that increase your level of comfort or increase your level of fear or something different?
So it decreased my level, the level of comfort and increased my fear.
Do you remember, at some point, do you take your knife out of your pocket?
Yes, I do.
Do you know when that is in relation to these slides? Do you have a memory exactly of when that is?
Not exactly, but when they were pushing and poking at me, I remember I pulled it out then.
Okay. Do you remember, did you have it out before you were punched or after you were punched?
Before I was punched.
Okay. Showing you another set of slides here. It looks like do you remember doing something with your left hand?
Yeah, at that moment I really needed my people to come over and help me, so I was trying to get their attention.
One more slide here. Do you, what's happening here in the slide?
Madison is pushing on my left shoulder and basically yelling at me right in my face.
And then on the next slide, we see something in your hand. Is that right?
That's a knife.
Why did you take out your knife at that point?
I was beginning to be afraid.
And what was it about that moment where everybody is that made you so fearful that you took out your knife?
I was surrounded. They were yelling. They had just pushed me. Well, the lady. They squeezed my arm. I mean, it seemed like they were not backing away.
Previously, you turned around. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you feel comfortable turning around in this situation?
No.
Why not?
They were too close to me.
What happened the last time that you turned around?
Nothing good.
Judge, this
good place to break.
May as well be.
All right, it's 12 noon. Let's break for lunch.
I gotta tell you, Bob, it's interesting that we are just watching this. I could see that in the chats, it's very split. A lot of different opinions on this.
So I was telling you, man, it's like it's one of those cases, man. It's I want to hear them out the whole way, because when they track him down after the whole thing goes down and he leaves, you know, he doesn't tell his party what happened, and you know, and then he lies about all kinds of shit to the cops when they get to him, you know. So there's an argument, well, is that consciousness of guilt? And this is a different situation, you know. Like I don't know that the consciousness of guilt information is relevant to the key question. The issue here is as to whether or not, you know, because when you look at this video, and it's curious to me that thus far the defense has decided not to play the video. I'm hoping that they do. I think that they should, because this is like a Lord of the Flies type shit, man. This is like an old dude, like guys my age, you know, out of shape, going down there, and like they haven't even brought up there, like the one kid, the kid filming him, Juan, keeps calling him a raper, screaming he's a raper, like while this guy's on the river. And at that point in time, you know, you have to like I was having this discussion with Cameron, my 17-year-old, and you know, we got into a huge debate, and it was really interesting to me because of the age differences of the two of us. You know, it's like you have teenagers who are all shit-faced, screaming at this guy, you know, like just being obnoxious is all. Like I told Cameron, I'm like, if I ever found out that you were acting like this, you know, in public to another human being, I'd be beside myself. You know, like there's nothing okay about what these kids were doing to this guy. And it got deadly, you know. I mean, it's like, yeah, like in there, somebody had asked a question whether or not the duty to retreat exists. And yes, it does. The question becomes, you know, in self-defense, if he has a reasonable fear of serious bodily injury or death, he's within his rights to defend himself. And when you've got 11 drunk, enraged people surrounding you, I think this thing's going to come back. And again, I want to watch the rest of it, but I think it's going to come back either hung. And with the jury breakdown, I think a majority is in an age group of 40, 50, and a couple of 60-year-olds. And there's not many young people on the jury. I think that older people, like if they were stuck in this situation, and this isn't going on for 20 minutes. You know, this thing transpired in minutes, you know, and you have to try to put yourself in a situation where you're being verbally attacked. You feel like you're being physically threatened, and it's all happening so fast, man. Like I don't know if you've ever been like in a brawl, Jay, but it's like those things, like time does not operate the same way. Like I was in a few brawls when I was, you know, younger in high school, and they're weird. It's like everything is working in like slow motion, but you're not aware of everything that's happening. It's kind of a blur, even though it seems like it's going slow. It's a tough case. It really is, you know, and it's like you've got one teen kid dead. You know, you've got four others that were injured pretty severely, or at least one of them was. You know, so it's like the after effects of it are hard to tolerate in terms of saying, well, you know, the guy should get a pass. But when you look at the situation and you take into consideration all the facts, I don't know. Like I always try to put myself in someone else's shoes in that situation to try to understand whether or not he was reasonable in his reaction. You know, I think the reason they brought up the sandals being in such bad shape was that the guy's walking through a river, you know, and I think that they're trying to say that this first video of him where he kind of is really approaching fast is that he was stumbling forward, you know, and you know, it's interesting. It's interesting. What's your gut at this point?
It's hard for me to say. I don't think I've seen enough to make a good. I saw the video. for me, like putting myself in his shoes, like I just wouldn't have a knife. I'm not a person that has a like I would never have a weapon on me, so it's hard for me to like put myself in. Like I don't know. It's hard for. I haven't seen enough. Just quickly, kind of thinking about it, like. I don't know, man. I might be like, listen, these fucking kids are. I gotta get the fuck. I'm more of a coward, man. I'm not taking on a group of people. I'd probably be like, listen, your phone. Good luck with that. Get a new phone. Like, I'm not. I have not been in a ball, Bob. So I feel like I would be like, this shit is crazy. Like, but if they like cornered him, that's it's. I don't. I feel like I probably don't have enough here to make a educated. To say what I would do because I just haven't seen. But
it's same. Like I typically, maybe in that situation again. Remember, he's got the knife because they're tubing, and people do tie all their tubes together. Like this group had theirs all tied together. His group had theirs all tied together. He didn't go over there to pick a fight. He went over there literally to look for his buddy's phone, and then the shit starts with the kids. Making this shit up about him being a pedo and looking for little girls and being a raper.
I just happened because this is blowing up on Twitter, like you said. I saw someone showed that the one guy's testimony. He's like, did you say that he was, looking for being a pedo? He's like, yeah. He's like, did you see him looking for girls? He's like, no. Like,
no,
so
that was me.
They're just hyping this shit up like crazy when he's done nothing to warrant that. Nothing. And then they're screaming it. But obviously, if you're in that situation, someone's screaming that, they're trying to get you to jump you. They want you to beat the shit out of you because, obviously that is going to, people start hearing this guy's doing stuff with little children. So right. I can see why that would make him be like, holy shit, I need to say, like, I'm going to get fucking killed here. So
right.
It's
right.
Like, there's so much to it, there's a lot.
And so when the kids are screaming that, this group of women, that's when they come in from the shore or wherever they were kind of holed up, they start approaching him. So then there's like 11 people around this guy and he's in a river, shallow nonetheless, but it's still 6, 8, whatever, foot deep. It's not like you can just start running, and it's like, do you turn your back on this crew? That's like, right. I don't know.
I could see why there's a lot of big,
I had posted the kid. It was Joanne, the kid who was filming it all, who was really the one screaming, kept calling him a raper. And, the kid's like turns the camera on himself after he sees his friend floating in the water.
I saw that.
And he's like, is this real? Is this live? I'm like, what the fuck, man?
Well, that's another aspect of this where if you're in like a public place like that and you do like, there's no chance that there's not going to be video going forward, like in the future, like these trials that we're seeing, like even with the case we watched with Zach, that was on video. Going forward, this shit happens. You're in like a public place. I mean, this is going to be on a video. There's going to be whether it's someone's camera, especially if there's like kids this age, whether it's a ring like they're going to see this shit. This is not going to be where people don't see pretty much almost everything that happened. I mean, it's
the one thing that I am sad that is not on the video is there was a claim. The claim is by multiple witnesses who all said different things, though, was that this Nick guy struck the woman, Maddie, that he hit her. Because he ends up getting punched in the face and he goes down. And the kid said that was in response to him hitting the woman. Somehow that wasn't caught on the video. I don't know exactly how it wasn't. That changes things a bit. It may not change my mind totally, though, because this thing just evolved. It was like, in Illinois, they have a crime that you can be charged with. It's called mob action. And that's when mob mentality takes over of a group of people, that you're thinking is and acting as a collective as opposed to individuals anymore. It's a real thing. And, when I watched this thing, that's what it was. It was like an angry mob that was angry at him for nothing. He had done nothing. And, so yeah, we'll see. Do you want to break and come back?
Well, I gotta pick up Brian from school. So I'm gonna, if you want to cover it, I am gonna, I have to go get my son.
You gotta go.
Yeah.
Right, cool.
So if you could set that up. By the way, before I end it, I want to say, first of all, again, me and Bob tomorrow, I'll be sending it out we're covering the Chad Daybell case, so we'll be doing this what we're doing right now, but with Chad Daybell tomorrow, it's I think it'll be 10:30 Eastern. That's so look out for that. Also, when I end this, I have this set up for Steve, who's in the chat. Publicly Buzzed has a stream tonight. I'm just going to pour you over to that, so folks, make sure you give it a like.
What's up, Steve-O?
And I don't know, Bob, if you have anything tonight or tomorrow, other than Daybell. I know you got stuff that Bob's folks. If you don't know, Bob's been on vacation. You're talking about this, so I bet you have a bunch of stuff that you're probably going to be doing shortly regarding some stuff. So I don't know if anything you want to tell anything.
Yeah, I'm either going to go live tonight or tomorrow. I've got to listen to some content or read some content and respond appropriately. So I don't know if that'll be tomorrow or tonight. There's some documents I want to go through as well with my subs on regarding Delphi, because there were a couple, the case never sleeps, obviously never slept while I was gone either. So
are you gonna CH is asking, are you gonna cover the after lunch? You're gonna cover this case?
Yeah. I'll put on the rest of the testimony when they get back. What time did they say they were coming back?
That I don't know. Does anyone know? By the way, I'm going to put Bob's link. If you're on my page and you're not already subscribed to Bob, make sure you're subscribed, especially if you want to watch the. Does anyone know what time they are coming back, folks? If you could throw it in the chat. Anyone know? Let me see if this. They're still doing some.
Yeah, well, they were definitely taking mid lunch, so it's going to be at least an hour, which is good.
All right, so let me let you guys. So make sure you're subscribed to Bob's on vacation. Let the man have some lunch. He's going to set up the stream, and then again, me and Bob will be back tomorrow. And again tonight, Publicly Buzzed. They said 1:20 Wisconsin time. I don't know what time that is. Our time.
That's my time. That's 1:20. They're coming back.
That's what.
Oh yeah, I forgot. We're behind time. Okay, yeah. All right. So 1:20. So that's a half an hour. So yeah, y'all. I'll create the stream, and I'll put the link out there.
All right. Cool.
All right. Love
guys.
you, Jay.
All right. Love you. See you guys.